game continues, for now.
You probably haven't heard of Inescapable No Rules No Rescue before. It wouldn't surprise me. It's a small game from a small studio in the relatively niche genre of killing game visual novels. It's pulling influence from Danganronpa, Zero Escape, and weirdly enough a little bit of Overwatch. We'll get to that later, and centers on the premise of a dark web reality show called Inescapable. 11 people from across Europe are kidnapped and dropped on a mysterious island for 6 months with no laws to govern them, no accountability from the outside world, and no escape. If they survive to the end, they make €500,000. Along the way, producers and sisters Naomi and Naima de Winter will contact players to offer incentives to create more drama for ratings. Or, players might contact them to offer to trade something for an advantage. You play as Harrison, a bus driver from the UK and the straight English version of my friend Kuiper as he tries to navigate the situation he's been placed in. Now, this premise might sound theoretically workable to you. You might hear me say that and think, you know what, sure, why not? I like Danganronpa or Zero Escape or smaller games like Buried Stars or Your Turn to Die or any number of other games in this sort of mini genre, so I'll give it a shot. You might even think, this sounds kind of stupid, but so do most of these games, and they're still sometimes pretty fun. Rest assured, you are wrong. Perhaps the most wrong you've ever been about a video game. The Inescapable is not just flawed. It is not a decent first effort that needs to have some rough edges sanded off in a sequel. It is not an instance of talented people trying to turn a bad premise into the best possible version of itself. Inescapable is fundamentally fucking awful on every level. From its boring, inconsequential premise, to its characters that are profoundly heinous and unoriginal in equal measure, to its deeply unpleasant dialogue, to its outright refusal to allow the player to be an active, knowing participant in the outcome of their own destiny. You are surrounded at all moments in this game by the most obnoxious attempts at impersonating real human beings presented as mean-spirited caricatures of other characters and people that the writers clearly want to mock. You are doing so on an island where you are forced to play 180 days of tedious monotony where nothing happens because there is no reason for anything to happen, meaning that the rare occasions where something does happen are universally the result of unprompted, unhinged behavior. I am fairly confident that the people who wrote this game have never in their lives experienced a real human conversation, and I'm also pretty confident that Sasha was just written by training AI data off the RuPaul's Drag Race subreddit then asking it to present it in the voice of Sombra from Overwatch, and I promise we will get to that later, but I am getting ahead of myself for now. This video goes out to everyone who thinks I'm a little too hateful towards Overwatch. I told you guys that those videos were made as somebody who is ultimately, sometimes regrettably, a fan of Overwatch, and a lot of people seemingly still don't believe me. Let this video recalibrate your expectations for what it actually looks like when I truly hate a piece of media and the people who made it. If you work for Dreamloop in any capacity and were responsible in any way for this game's existence, I want you to make sure you watch this from start to finish so you can maybe learn what to do differently. And by that, I mean maybe you can learn to find work in a different industry. Maybe take up accounting. Something where there's no risk of you ever attempting to do anything creative ever again. Actually, no, scratch that. Accounting requires skill, competency, and some capacity for noticing and fixing mistakes. And given that your game has a bug 6 months after launch that causes it to fully crash if the controller dies or disconnects, you also clearly don't have that. I have no qualms about being brutal about the truly heinous game these people put out into the world because frankly, they have the audacity to falsely advertise it as some sort of Danganronpa style game complete with the pink blood and then charge more than it would cost to buy all 3 Danganronpa games right now at full price. Hell, if you were savvy with discounts, you could pick up nearly every visual novel I've ever streamed, including, 999, Virtue's Last Reward, Zero Time Dilemma, I the Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative, Buried Stars, Your Turn to Die, and Ace Attorney, plus all the Danganronpa games for less than this game at full price. However, I didn't pay full price. In fact, I paid nothing for this game, because it was a Christmas present for me from my brother who isn't super familiar with the games in this genre, but he knows I love them and wanted to get something similar for me. If you're wondering why I'm maybe uniquely willing to roast this dogshit game, it's because their blatant false advertising as a Danganronpa-esque game led my brother, and I bet a lot of other people given the near holiday 2023 release, to buy it for a loved one who's a fan of the games that they're shamelessly ripping off. And make no mistake, that's where their money is gonna come from for this game. It's not from people who think the game is good, because it isn't, and nobody pre-lobotomy would think it is. It's from people who think that someone they care about likes games like this and wants to get them something they'll enjoy. Like, I'm genuinely mad that you scammed my brother when he was only trying to do something thoughtful for me. It's been months since I got this game, and I'm still pissed that you stole his money like that. And to be clear, I'm absolutely not upset at him. The point of a gift is the thought behind it, and he really did put a lot of thought into trying to get something I'd like. And it's not his fault that Dreamloop are a bunch of con artists. Treating this game like it belongs in that same category of the games it's ripping off is not only false advertising, but offensive to the concept of visual novels. And frankly, treating this game like a real video game is offensive to the concept of video games. You guys are lucky I can't afford a lawyer, because if I could, you'd be hearing from them. Instead, you and everyone else are going to be hearing from me for at least the next hour. And I hope you know this is going to be the thing that defines your game on the internet, Dreamloop. Nobody is going to know about your game, but if they do, it'll be from this video. And the really tragic thing about that is, this video only needs a few thousand views for that to be true. Now, on to the video. Part 1. The premise.
This is it. Prepare for trouble and make it double. My! And what a diverse cast! You'd imagine it's for a basic bitch streaming service! Someone give us a trophy already! Say, sis, what do you think of them? Why? Wanna place a bet on who survives? You don't think... Let's not play favorites just yet. Our viewers can choose, and we'll go from there. But we get to use the nukes, right? Maybe later. Ready? Fine! Lights! Camera! Action! Boom!
For this section, I'm going to try my best to neutrally recap the premise of this game without too much flavor commentary. Roasting will come later, don't worry, but I think we need to establish what happens in the game itself. The premise of Inescapable No Rules, No Rescue, which is just going to be called Inescapable going forward, is that you play as Harrison, a British bus driver who was tricked into boarding a bus with the other contestants at the beginning of the game in Spain under the premise he was meeting some old friends from his school days. We don't know what happened during that time, but we know he admired his friends and then ended up being a coward by his own admission in a way that led to his friend group splitting up or something. Just as a heads up, this never really gets resolved. He watches other contestants board the bus, not knowing their fate, only to be gassed and wake up inside a shipping container. The shipping container has a small puzzle to solve before he can escape, which makes you think it's going to do some sort of escape room puzzles in the future along the lines of Zero Escape, but no, this is the only time this happens in the majority of routes. Once escaping, Harry runs into Mia, the game's German representation. She informs him the others have escaped before him and are currently at the island's resort. He goes there to meet them, and after some introductions that we're glossing over because we'll get to them later, the contestants receive a video call from Naima and Naomi de Winters informing them of their situation.
I am Naima, one of the producers, and I am here to answer some of your questions. Sup, fuckers? Name's Naomi, and I'm here to annoy you!
Did you actually kidnap us? WTF?
Where are we? What do you want with us?
I've got some questions too.
Please, one at a time, settle down, don't talk over each other. I did prepare an intro speech. I would not like it to go to waste. Let's look at the big picture, shall we? You lucky few have been chosen from among many people we've been shadowing. Your current location is Tropical Paradise. As you've already noticed, you are in a resort. We'll go over the facilities later. You'll be participating in a show. Because of its nature, your participation is involuntary. Hence the kidnapping! You got it? The show's purpose is to show human nature unrestrained by laws and regulations. Imagine that one time when you wished you could have just punched someone! Now you can! Our viewers on the internet will observe you over the course of the next 6 months. The current date is September 15th, 2017. Your phones are accurate. March 11th of 2018 is your last day on this island. So that means for half a year you're stuck here with no rules. You can do whatever the fuck you want. I can already give you some ideas.
This is totally not the kind of show I was promised, like breach of contract.
I can't do this. I have a competition to attend to.
Half a year! No, please, I have siblings I must take care of.
Puttana, sei fottumente pazza!
Quiet! Don't make me bring out the nukes already! Ahem. To make up for the inconvenience and to offer some incentive, all players who are alive at the end of the 6 months will receive 500,000 euros.
They are the unwilling contestants on the first season of Inescapable, the dark web reality show where random people are kidnapped and dropped on a secret island to fend for themselves for 6 months. Survivors will win 500,000 euros at the end of their stay, regardless of how many other survivors make it to the end, and can earn additional rewards by doing as the producers say. There are no rules on the island, and there is no rescue. As the producers said, the game will last 6 months, or about 180 days. While on the island, you'll play through Halloween, Christmas, New Year's, and at least 2 characters' birthdays. Occasionally, contestants are asked to complete a specific task, like building a spa on the island's volcano, or competing in an island-wide hunt for boxes containing secrets. That's the narrative anyway. The gameplay side of things is a bit more tedious. You will be playing through nearly every one of those 180 days with 3 things happening each day, in the morning, afternoon, and evening. Although occasionally the writers couldn't think of anything for you to do, so Harry just decides to go to bed early and skip an evening, or sleep in late and skip a morning, or take a nap and skip an afternoon. Hell, sometimes they skip full days or even full weeks out of nowhere. The game does not inform you that it has multiple endings, at least not at the beginning, but it does have 4 routes for you to go down. Lust, trust, suspicion, and greed, and we will get to those later. For the first 60 days on the island, nothing really happens because nothing can happen. See, Inescapable doesn't want to just be an outright killing game, mostly because its premise doesn't really offer any incentives to kill people, so most of these routes are death-free. The divergence point in the game is after the first 60 days, where you'll be funneled into one of the 4 routes based on your decisions and conversations in the first 60 days. Most conversations and decisions will give you a point towards one of the 4 routes. If you choose to hang out with Ava a lot, you might get a point towards lust. If you choose to redeem other people's secrets for a cash prize instead of opening them, you'll get a point towards greed. If you trust other people, you'll get points towards trust, and if you get too paranoid, you'll end up on the suspicion route. Again, the game doesn't tell you that this is happening or give you any indication of which decisions reflect upon your character in a way that'll affect an outcome or, what route you're starting to head down or anything else. At this point, I have to say these first 60 days are insanely tedious. My first playthrough was about 27-ish hours, and it took at least 10 hours just to get past this point. In each subsequent playthrough to finish the other routes, this usually took about 4-ish hours where I stopped reading dialogue out loud, tried to rush as much as possible, generally tried to just get through it quickly because we already knew what happened, because nothing happens. For greed, it took longer because setting high scores in the arcade games was a part of that, and the arcade games are uniquely miserable. Plus, my game crashed right after I'd spent half an hour trying to hit the high scores in them, so I had to redo them. This will be discussed later, don't worry. Remember, nothing really happens during this time because nothing can happen during this time. This needs to be as neutral as possible while you rack up points towards one route or another. So nobody can die, no characters can make any strong decisions, and you're basically just in a perpetual cycle of waking up, playing Wordle. Oh yeah, they gave you Wordle for some reason pretty early on. Talking to someone in the morning about nothing, then talking to someone in the afternoon about nothing, and then talking to someone in the evening about nothing, and then going to sleep. Honestly, tedious is a charitable description of these conversations. They are rarely even remotely interesting since, again, characters can't reveal too much about who they are at this point because it would risk influencing the choices you make, and would also require that these be canon decisions, canon personality traits across all 4 routes. Pretty early on in this process, the De Winters allow you to buy gossip and dirt on the other contestants through a weird pair of conversation currencies. What you do to earn this currency isn't super clear, and what you can do to earn the most isn't defined, and the distinction between gossip and dirt is also really, really poorly defined. And again, you can't actually do whatever you want. Completing the Wordle will count towards greed, as will the arcade games. You can't choose to speak to whoever you want unless you don't care about what route you go down, since different characters will guide you down different routes. Unlocking dirt puts you down the suspicion route, and unlocking gossip will put you down the lust route. If you don't want greed, you need to throw the fishing competition with Geo, which, not hard, the fishing game is atrocious. If you don't want the lust route, you need to avoid talking to women in general unless they're Valerie, and maybe Francisca and Lumi. And especially avoid talking to them at the pool, or you might end up in a lewd CG with them in the sauna being naked apart from some steam. If you don't want suspicion, you need to avoid accidentally trying to talk to a character who doesn't realize you're there, which the game treats like eavesdropping. You'll notice that trust isn't coming up here much, and that's because it's the game's true route in the sense that it's the one where you don't play the sisters' games. However, as a consequence, it's also easily the most boring starting route because you're explicitly not allowed to engage with any of the things it's using to try and tempt you into the other routes. Now, you might think this is a weird thing to do for both the narrative pacing but also for the in-universe fiction, and you're correct. The justification for this is that this is the first season of Inescapable, and Naomi, Naima, and the rest of the producers kinda just, don't have a plan for it. They kidnapped everyone and dropped them on the island and set up this whole thing without really knowing what kind of show they were trying to make. They decide on day 57, give or take, what kind of reality competition show this is, what kind of prizes there should be, and everything else based on how you behave and the audience responds, which is why interacting with certain characters and engaging with certain activities is supposed to change the route. You've given the audience something, they liked what you gave them, so the producers are leaning in. This is, to put it mildly, completely insane on every level. This is a large-scale professional underground operation. You're telling me they didn't even have a premise or a concept for their show? It's just stick them on an island, see what they do, and then reformat the whole show around that? It's one of those things that you have to simultaneously believe that the people running the game are part of the shadowy cabal of evil genius masterminds, but also have made no real plan and don't know what they're doing. This is exacerbated by the fact that this is simultaneously a dark web show that has ratings and is popular enough in the mainstream that people at home like Valerie's family and Harrison's passengers on his bus are aware of what happened. And yet simultaneously, nobody at home has realized that several extremely wealthy and powerful people are out there and do anything about it. Like, somebody like Valerie gets kidnapped and people are going to look for her. We'll get into that later. Same with Geo. Again, we'll get into him later too. And yet the game is written in such a way that they should have been able to be found, and yet nobody seems to have even bothered trying. None of the endings feature some sort of tearful reunion where everyone gets back home, nobody is getting questioned by the authorities about who took them or even what they did on the island, like nothing. Like I said, each of the game's routes has a different ending, and they diverge pretty substantially. However, before we get into that, we need to talk about these characters, and buckle in, because this is where I stop even trying to pretend to be neutral about this game. Part 2. The Characters. There is, frankly, nothing nice to say about really any of the characters in this game. The worst part about the fact that nothing happens for the first 60 days is that all 11 of the characters survive for 2 full months, when even if there were laws on the island, you would never be able to find a jury that would convict you for killing any of these people. None of them act like human beings. They don't talk like them, they don't engage with the world like them, and they don't react to things like them. These are mean-spirited caricatures of humanity written by someone with malice in their heart instead of creativity and asbestos in their brain instead of neurons. If this game had a route where you could kill everyone and then yourself on day 20, that would be the only ending most players would get, and it would be the only good ending in the bunch. Also, crucially, there is a lot of unsubtle character design, quote-unquote, inspiration, and heaviest possible air quotes going on here. I'll get into it more once we get into each individual character, but like, this is an Overwatch channel for the most part. I'm a Sombra main for the most part, and if you're watching me, or this video, you almost certainly know who the fuck Sasha's based off of. And they're not the only one either. Multiple characters are either clearly inspired by a character from another franchise, usually Danganronpa, or are clearly lifting elements of the character. And look, I get it. In games like this, there's usually some archetypes being filled. Danganronpa itself has different characters fulfilling similar narrative roles in each of the games. But trust me, when I say that this is so much worse than that, and I haven't really seen other reviews fully acknowledge that this is just Gundam Tanaka but worse, and this is Celestial Ludenberg but worse. But we'll get there. While about half the roster is outright stolen from somewhere else, the other half of the roster will make you wish they'd stolen the full cast from better writers. I'm bad with names and tend to struggle to remember the names of characters when I'm first playing a game like this. Like, I started playing Your Turn to Die back in February and struggled to really remember names for the first couple streams, and even in the most recent ones, still forget sometimes. And that's not that uncommon for games like this for me, especially if you only play them for 3 to 4 hours once a week. However, you can usually still remember characters based off of personality or appearance or something, and that's not really the case with Inescapable. These characters are bland, empty, vapid, and also often just performed entirely incorrectly for who they're ostensibly supposed to be. When it comes to the just straight up visual design element, the characters are fine, mostly. I generally describe them as like technically proficient and creatively insufficient. The people who drew these characters have skill when it comes to execution for the most part, but are terrible at doing the concept work. These designs range from store-brand Danganronpa OCs to background characters who've inexplicably been promoted to the main cast. The most visually egregious characters are incoherently designed, pulling references from various places but without understanding why those reference things exist or what they're trying to say. The rest are generally deeply uninspired with boring outfits to go with their boring personalities. Good character designers use clothing to tell you something about a character, and these outfits tell you basically nothing about any of them except that Annika's a maid. The only positive thing I can say about the character designs is that they're at least not as horrendously egregious as the original concept art, because good fucking god, just pause the video for a second and take in all of whatever the fuck this is. Anyways, let's go point by point through all these characters. Part 2.1, Harrison.
I'm Harrison.
Our British main character, Harrison, is dumb, creepy, and otherwise uninteresting. He's mopey and self-pitying, ostensibly very smart according to his biography, but deeply stupid and unobservant in reality, and, at best, a total sleazebag whenever women are involved. He's a university dropout missing his friends from high school who worked as a bus driver before being kidnapped. He's physically unremarkable, with other characters regularly noting that he's mid at best, and yet in the absence of any other men on the island who aren't insane misogynists, creepy cultists, or Daan, he inexplicably ends up becoming a favorite of the women on the island and can abuse that to get what he wants depending on what ending you go down. His personality in general is pretty heavily dictated by the choices you make and the route you end up on, meaning that he doesn't have a personality for the first third of the game and has an outright awful one for the remaining 2/3. It's also always a uniquely awful one in each route, ranging from stupid but tolerable in suspicion to one of the worst characters ever written in Lust. His only saving grace is that, as far as I can tell, he isn't ripped off too much from some other character from some other franchise. Although if it comes out that one of the artists behind Inescapable follows my friend Kiefer, I will have to revise that statement because it is uncanny. His official biography also lists himself as one of his dislikes, which is deeply relatable as someone who also doesn't like Harrison. Part 2.2, Mia.
My name's Maria, but everyone calls me Mia. What's your name?
Our German rep Mia is a lot. She's a lot. It's generally implied that her parents were shitty and likely abusive to her and her many younger siblings, and that they eventually abandoned the kids to be raised by Mia. Mia is your companion throughout the game. The Aiba to your Date, the Kyoko to your Makoto, the Akane to your Junpei. That is, if Aiba wasn't funny, if Kyoko wasn't smart, and Akane didn't at least have some interesting fun facts to drop in the capacity to form a semi-coherent plan. The one she's most like is probably Chiaki from Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair, and you're gonna notice the theme of that game appearing a bunch here, right down to the island getaway setting, in terms of her general aesthetic and personality, including a love for video games, except there's never any payoff for how she acts. Depending on the route you head down, she'll either become one of your prospective romantic partners before shutting you down for becoming a womanizer, which isn't the worst, or your assistant detective, which is the worst, because it's thanks to her profound ineptitude that you are constantly barking up the wrong trees and accusing the wrong people. And that's when she's not outright hiding evidence from you for some reason. She's also kind of a true crime girly as well, and it feels pretty apparent throughout the game that this is the writer's dig at true crime girlies. People who think they're clever and can solve anything because they listen to a podcast with a Squarespace sponsorship and then flop hard when it actually comes down to it. Another major issue with this, with Mia being your sidekick of sorts, that we will get into more later, is that she isn't a neutral option. Speaking with her at all in the first 60 days gives you points towards the suspicion route, but in all 4 routes, she's treated as a close companion even though you spend relatively little time with her in a lot of routes, which makes her role even more muddled and bizarre. Part 2.3. Ava.
Oh, yes. Hi, I'm Ava. You probably totally know me from my viral meme, lol.
Ava is a makeup artist and niche Estonian social media influencer. Not that you know it from listening to her. I don't know what an Estonian accent sounds like, but I'm willing to bet my house that it isn't a fucking California Valley girl accent. Ava is, generally, a deeply obnoxious character. However, in a game devoid of good characters, to make it interesting, she's at least able to bring some conflict to the table. She's the only one on the island who, right from the jump, recognizes that this is a reality TV show, it's a popularity contest, and that it's important to get on the producer's side. She has been kidnapped in late 2019, and if she watches Drag Race, which does canonically exist in the Inescapable universe, we will get to that later, then she's well aware of the risks of getting the sugarcane treatment. In Survivor terms, this is also called the Purple Kelly edit, the edit where you're present in the game but basically never get any airtime because your narrative doesn't go anywhere and you're not really part of any major relevant conflicts. Gotta create conflicts so the producers like you and want to put you front and center, and Ava certainly does that. I want to call her the plain Jane of this game, except I can't tell if that's more of an insult to Ava or plain. She creates showmances for herself, she creates conflict for herself, and she generally creates the only vaguely compelling character in the game from the perspective of a reality TV fan. Unfortunately, instead of pulling from a specific character in another piece of media, they seemingly just made her this generic 2012 social media influencer girl. She got famous from being the kebab my face girl, according to Mia, says LOL and XD and OMG regularly. She constantly talks about growing her follower count, and she is obsessed with popularity. She performs for the cameras, but I desperately wish someone had given her a character to perform that wasn't clearly written by some middle-aged dude who hates the women he sees on Instagram's Explore page. Oh, and before you start standing her, she'll randomly drop some transphobic slurs regarding the next character on this list for literally no reason at one point in the game, and it's one of the few times where the game doesn't get on her shit for being a vapid attention-seeking asshole. The only thing I genuinely like about her is that if you romance her for the lust route, she eventually gets sick of your shit and dumps you for being a clout-hungry goblin. Part 2.4. Annika.
Annie is Annika. Annie is a bit scared.
Excuse me?
Yeah? Annie just shared that Annie is Annika. Annie is from Sweden. Annie is 20 soon. Annie likes fika and godis.
Annika is the only character who genuinely deserves better in this game, and is the only one I will outright say is the victim of malicious writing at the hands of the developers. Everyone else sucks in ways that I think are inherent to their characters and can't be fixed, but Annie is the game's punching bag at every turn. The 19-year-old Swedish maid is effectively Kurumi Tojo with bigger boobs and a developmental disability. And if that sounds horrible, which it does, that's how the game fucking describes her. Her official in-game bio notes that she refers to herself in the third person as the result of a, quote, developmental disability, and it's heavily implied that she spent time in a psych ward that drove her insane on top of this. She has a picture-perfect memory at most times, although it starts to slip if she's struggling with something, and she'll start slipping up and referring to herself in the first person occasionally if she's under pressure or trying to hide a secret. She is infantilized at every turn, with other characters treating her like a child who's too stupid to understand them, much less smart enough to be an equal member of the group. She's usually talked over or ignored in group meetings, people make gross sexual comments to her, and Ava and Harrison openly speculate about whether she's secretly a trans woman at one point because of how she looks. Beyond that, she's just expected to cook and clean for everyone else. She makes their meals, she cleans the whole island, and she's responsible for managing food orders from producers. She is objectified in the most literal sense when she's turned into a human security camera who's meant to use their perfect memory to identify when the producers have meddled with things on the island, but isn't really treated as part of the actual plot to overthrow the producers aside from her utility. It's genuinely just really shitty and ableist throughout the game in a way that's honestly shocking the first time you experience it, and just never gets better. The developers are going to hell for a lot of reasons, don't get me wrong, but creating a character that is just Kurumi Tojo with a developmental disability because they wanted a maid but didn't want her to get any ideas and thought maybe doing the most offensive and inexcusable ableism I've ever seen in a game was a good way to achieve that is right near the very top of that list. I promise you, however bad I'm making this sound, it is so much worse when you're playing. And it only gets worse in the lust route where Harrison becomes an outright sexual predator towards her. The game treats her as childlike because of her disability, but then you get to feel her up when she's laying on the ground, and regularly fall on her and grab her chest. Very cool, very normal thing to write in your game, guys. Anyways, moving on. Part 2.5. Daan.
Oh, hi. I forgot I'm Daan. Sorry, a bit frazzled. Not well.
Daan is gender-bent Dutch Aoi Asahina except with a boner for cops and a fucked up view of justice. He's a high-level cyclist whose brain was clearly melted by whatever performance enhancers he was doing because he will literally say his feelings out loud during conversations to communicate to the audience that he's dumb as rocks. He's not particularly sympathetic towards anyone at any point, taking a pull yourself up by your bootstraps approach to most people when they're struggling, and if you end up in a route where there are murders and you refuse to execute them, he'll declare himself to be the jailer so he can personally torture the perpetrators, but will adamantly oppose the death penalty. In those same routes, he is willing to kill innocent people with a brutal poison by accident and without remorse if it means being able to kill the bad people. And yeah, I did say he's opposed to the death penalty. He just kind of changes it up at some point. Don't think too hard about it, because they certainly didn't. He's stupid, he jumps into every problem despite deep incompetence, and the game somehow still sees him as a likable character. In other words, while his character concept is clearly modeled after Aoi Asahina, his personality is a bit more like if Junpei Tenmyoji from Zero Escape was ride or die for the thin blue line. Part 2.6 Giovanni.
Giovanni Lombardi. Pleasure.
Giovanni is the oldest character on the island by a considerable mile at 52, and if you're like basically everyone who's attracted to men who watched me while I was streaming this, you might have been down bad for him when you've seen bits and pieces of him throughout the video so far. However, the Italian stallion is where we finally have to acknowledge a few of the shittier running themes throughout Inescapable. I mean, aside from the ableism. Talking about misogyny, transphobia, and a weird amount of Catholicism. We're introduced to Gio as he's complaining about how Sasha uses they-them pronouns, and he rants about how there are only two genders, and since Sasha looks like a boy to him, he's gonna call them a he. It's so fucking dumb and heavy-handed. Throughout the game, though, it becomes clear that he's not really pulling from a fictional reference, at least not that I can see. Rather, he's just Italian Andrew Tate, right down to the organized crime and weird sex stuff, although in Gio's case, he's a mafia boss with a history as a porn star. Possibly in gay porn, I don't know, who hosts BDSM parties. Trust me, we will get to that later. He becomes close friends with Sasha because he likes their proclivities towards sexual harassment and violence, because, as we'll get to later, that's 95% of Sasha's personality, and he's constantly an asshole to everyone. He's generally relatively respectful towards women, provided they stay in their place, but when Francisca talks about cars or football, he becomes a raging asshole at her about how only men can do those things because women are too dumb and weak. This happens a lot. His Catholicism is also brought up a lot, as he and Francisca are both religious, but he is far more so. It ostensibly informs a lot of his bigotry, but is also used in various ways and various routes to explain his violence and explain the violence done to him. He is also constantly making gay innuendo with Daan and Harry specifically, and regularly offers to get naked with Harry in the sauna to discuss quote-unquote man stuff. So it's kinda generally implied that the joke is that he's a little bit gay despite his wife and kids at home, or that he's just a little naive about how he sounds towards men. Again, we will get to that later, I promise you, but for now just put a pin in it. Part 2.7 Isak.
Welcome to the Abduction Hotel! My name is Isak. I am your local guide.
Isak is, according to his biography, a famous Norwegian jeweler. A fact that I had literally forgot about until I went to write this script because it almost never comes up in game aside from the time he makes a quote-unquote love bracelet for Harry that's literally just a bent nail. The more realistic description of him is that he's the love child of Gundam Tanaka from Danganronpa 2 and Korekiyo Shinguji from Danganronpa V3 wearing Nagato Kamaida's jacket. Just combine the worst parts of both characters, filter out anything remotely redeeming or interesting, have them be voiced by someone trying and failing to sound like a gayer Scar from The Lion King, and you get Isak. He is fucking awful to be around at every and any point in time in the game. There is literally no moment in the game improved by his presence, and he is the clearest example of someone trying to force their Danganronpa OC into this game without any consideration of either making a better OC or a better game for him. He never contributes anything useful to the island life, he's never helpful or interesting, and he's never even a decent antagonist in the routes where he goes full sociopath. And again, we'll get to that later, put a pin in it, trust and believe we don't have time for it right now. He's motivated by some incoherent mishmash of pantheons from all over the world, with Japanese, Greek, Roman, Norwegian, and Egyptian gods, plus probably more, all getting their turn in the sun with him. He truly does hate Catholicism though, having had beef with the local church and regularly fighting with Gio about it. Earlier, I mentioned that Eva at least knew she was on a reality show and was trying to curry favor with the producers and the audience. That gave her some intentionality behind her actions. Isak, despite also trying to curry favor with one of the producers, and again, put a pin in it, has none of that. He's obnoxious, mean-spirited, and incoherent in his motivations. I said he's like a Danganronpa OC, but it's more like if someone played the Danganronpa franchise and fucking hated Gundam and Kyo and wanted to parody them. Unfortunately, the writers of this game are barely literate enough to write straightforward dialogue to begin with, much less competent parody, so he's just everything bad with the two characters with nothing redeemable or interesting. Part 2.8 Lumi. Lumi is the only character I am 100% confident is an entirely original character, and that's only because the Danganronpa games don't have any black characters. She's Finnish with Senegalese heritage, and while most characters bring up their home countries in ways that are, kind of forced and give the vibe of your friend who just got back from vacation in Spain and insists on calling it Ibiza, She genuinely has some interesting moments where she brings up her experiences growing up black in Finland and having a blend of Finnish and Senegalese cultural experiences with stuff like food. She talks occasionally about how she isolates herself from the cast and prepares for the worst, even in the most cooperative routes, as a consequence of how she was treated as a child for being different, and that she's aware that she's different from the others on the island as the only non-white contestant. It's an interesting perspective to bring, and in the hands of better writers, you could absolutely see how a killing game could have interesting, complicated motivations as a consequence of how people have been conditioned into perceiving their environments, because of the existing social stigmas and bigotries they've experienced. The problem is that, regrettably, that's where anything interesting with her ends. She's a chemistry student, although she rapidly evolves into a chemistry expert on the island, and has the misfortune of having one of the weakest voice actors in the game coupled with the blandest writing. She's a quiet introvert who doesn't like expressing emotion, but her VA is giving the vibe that she just isn't getting paid enough to give a shit. She feels like she's reading her script for the first time in the booth, and they're taking the first take every time. Depending on the route, her vibe goes from so forgettable that it's like trying to name all 151 Pokemon and being stuck at the last one and pulling out your hair trying to remember and making me mad because of course it was fucking Tauros that you forgot, to, oh, holy shit, so she's actually a fucking monster who feels no remorse for kidnapping and torturing people, to, aw, they're kind of a cute couple. I know I'm getting ahead of myself a bit, but it's honestly just that there's so little to talk about with Lumi. Annika is the only character who deserved better as a character, but Lumi is easily the character concept that could have easily been the most interesting in the hands of competent writers. Part 2.9, Francisca.
Francisca.
What if Kazuichi Soda was a good Catholic bad girl from Portugal with every interesting design element of Kazuichi removed? Congrats, that's basically her whole deal. Despite that, she is actually one of the more tolerable characters. She's generally logical, generally not awful to be around, and only calls you an F-slur once every 3 sentences. Okay, I know it probably doesn't have the same connotations in Portuguese as it does in Spanish, but come on guys, it's still a bit much to use that term like it's fucking punctuation. She's generally pretty inoffensive, has one of the better VAs, and after spending 30 seconds being mad at Gio for his misogyny, becomes besties with him most of the time. They watch a bunch of the Fast and Furious movies together in at least one route, and you can watch them with them if you want to see Gio talking down to her about her taste in both cars and movies up until some point after Tokyo Drift. At some point, she apparently had an affair with a conservative female Spanish politician, but this seems to be inconsistent. It's mentioned at one point that the politician was a woman, but at another point that they were a man with a wife, and they only ever say she had one affair with a conservative Spanish politician, so who knows? She also had a baby that was only 2 months old before she was kidnapped to participate in Inescapable, a fact that's only brought up after the first 60 days and only in some routes. Also, I know I said that she's based off of Kazuichi Soda, and you might think that that's a bit of a stretch based on, what she looks like, but I want to point out her character color. Every character has a color, we'll get into it later. Her color doesn't match with her at all, but you know who it gets a lot closer to matching with? Yeah. See? Anyways, moving on. Part 2.10, Valerie.
Valerie d'Orléans. My pleasure.
Valerie, or to be accurate about it, I guess, Valerie d'Orléans, which I'm not going to say because my French is bad. Anyways, Valerie is the French heiress to a purportedly massive perfume empire, although the extent of her wealth and power seems to put her more on the level of a Russian oligarch more than a French CEO's daughter. She's entitled, she's rude, and she believes she's better than everyone else because she's upper class and cultured. If you're struggling to figure out who they ripped off for this one, I suggest looking closer at the long twin pigtails that spiral down to her hips and consider that she's a bratty European aristocrat with a superiority complex masking internal vulnerability. If you figured out that this is Celestia Ludenberg mixed with Hiyoko Saionji from Danganronpa's 1 and 2 respectively, without any of the interesting elements of Celestia as a gambler posing as an elite, or Hiyoko as an heiress with immense burdens on her shoulders, congratulations. In terms of her backstory, she also very much so has a lot of Byakuya Togami in there in terms of competing with her siblings to become the ultimate heir, basically. Anyways, Valerie is deeply annoying and has nothing positive to offer the narrative in any route, and alternates between being entirely forgettable and being the worst part of every arc she shoves her way into. In my first playthrough, she died relatively early, and my thought process was basically just, oh, that sucks. There are way worse characters I would rather see die here. But in every other route, I found myself wishing her death was a canon event just so I didn't have to deal with her bullshit. Part 2.11, Naima and Naomi.
I am Naima, one of the producers, and I am here to answer some of your questions. Sup, fuckers? Name's Naomi, and I'm here to annoy you!
Naima and Naomi de Winter are the producers of Inescapable, and are ostensibly sisters despite not sharing an accent or dialect, even though they literally have the same voice actor. They appear regularly throughout the game in video calls where they berate the players and generally try and stir up chaos, and frankly, I wish they didn't appear at all. The problem with games in this mini-genre is that Danganronpa obviously looms large over all of them, and the worst ones all just try to reinvent Junko Enoshima. Unfortunately, this is easily one of the worst reinventions of her. They're basically pulling a Shivering Isles Junko Enoshima, splitting her in half into the cool, calm, collected, and maybe mildly bored Naima de Winters, and the absolutely fucking feral Naomi. They are canonically supposed to be very smart, but Naomi in particular is wearing a graphic tank top with murder written across her boobs in a graffiti font, and somehow manages to fuck up so badly that she ends up getting forced to compete in the sequel set in Siberia in at least one route, while getting seduced by Isak of all fucking people in at least 3 of them, so I don't think that's possible. They're also ostensibly the ones running Inescapable, and so I put the full blame on them for this game's whole concept sucking ass in ways we'll get into later. Now, there's one character I didn't address here, and that's because they're getting their own goddamn section. Part 3. Sasha.
Nop.
This is Hunter, kind of weird person doesn't like fries. You'll get used to that, trust me.
Who's Hunter? They told me their name's Dick.
It's both.
Dick, Hunter?
Oh, already calling me names? Dick move if you ask me, Blondie.
Miss, that's not what I meant. How should we call you then?
Yelling works. My hearing's kinda bad, so don't whisper.
Valha meu Deus, name! Give real name! Why so hard?
Bigasco to him in the bus. Thinks he's neither girl nor boy. I call him boy. He looks boy.
Agenda. In this economy. Boomer.
Sasha, and I mean this sincerely, is the worst written character I have ever encountered. A while back during my Q&A video, I was asked if it's possible for pandering representation of queer characters to still be good representation. And I just know in my heart of hearts that the minute that I said, yeah, I think it's possible, the universe began conspiring to get this game into my hands to change my mind. Sasha is meant to be the queer representative in a way that none of the games they're pulling from really ever had. Someone who's not only sexually open to anybody and anything, but also someone who's non-binary. In order to accomplish this, they instead inexplicably turned to Overwatch to rip off Sombra, which is how I know this is personally targeted at me for that comment. This is, as far as I'm aware, the only instance of Inescapable ripping off a fictional character from anything other than a Spike Chunsoft killing game. And good fucking god, they did Sombra so dirty with this. Sasha is, similarly to Sombra, a gifted hacker who's traveled the world using their skills for all kinds of, usually illegal, shenanigans. Their country of origin is a mystery, as is their age, as they allegedly paid off the De Winters before the game began to have that data scrubbed from their in-game bio. How did this show manage to kidnap Sasha if this is who they are? Absolutely impossible to guess, and they are certainly not going to explain themselves ever. One of the challenges of the games in this genre is explaining how the masterminds managed to capture the people that they did and why they did it. Generally, they're connected by at least something, some sort of common thread. You know, Danganronpa's casts are always ultimates. Zero Escape's casts are always chosen because they play a bigger part in a bigger plan, stuff like that. The more competent the members of the cast are and the more spread out they are, the harder it is to justify how they all ended up here. Inescapable has no way to explain how or why it somehow managed to kidnap a French teenage heiress, one of the wealthiest families on Earth, a hacker of unknown origins and global notoriety, Italian Andrew Tate, and also just some random British bus driver. It's a totally incoherent cast that makes no sense logistically or narratively, and it screams, we thought this character was cool, and that's where our thinking stopped. Sasha is the worst culprit of this because they're easily the most how the fuck did they even manage to find you character of all of them. They are also, in case you missed it, queer. And in the minds of the Inescapable writers, this means that they're an incredibly aggressive sex pest who speaks primarily in threats of violence and broken quotes from Drag Race. Like, if it turned out that Sasha's entire personality was the result of asking libs of TikTok about what they think drag queens are saying to children at drag story hours and feeding that data alongside the Drag Race subreddit into ChatGPT, I would not be particularly surprised. Gio hates Sasha for being non-binary. I hate Sasha for being maybe the most hateful portrayal of a canonically queer character I've ever experienced in a game. We are not the same here. Danganronpa's handling of Chihiro was done with more sensitivity than anything and everything to do with Sasha. And the worst part is that the devs think they nailed it. Like, they think they very clearly did that with Sasha. They think that they are doing the most representation, despite not a single sentence out of Sasha's mouth being unaccompanied by a bastardized Tammy Brown quote or a reference to fisting and or dildos, and it really does need to be acknowledged that it is actually pretty bigoted to portray your only trans character as an aggressive sex pest who has killed people, uses being non-binary to hide their identity from the authorities, and hacks into people's private data. And you might be thinking, okay, but if they're based off of Sombra, then why is it okay when Sombra does it? Sombra's a Mexican cis woman who goes around hacking shit and killing people. Why is it only wrong if Sasha does it? And the answer is that Sombra is in a roster where every other character is, for the most part, some degree of war criminal. Sombra's activities are entirely on the same level as the rest of her roster, but the only inescapable contestant even close to being on Sasha's level is Gio, the literal mob boss. This gets even worse after completing all the other routes and learning that there is only a single character who is eventually revealed to be queer who isn't presented at least once as a cold-blooded killer. All of this presents Sasha as a uniquely suspicious, underhanded, and dangerous character compared to the rest of the roster, on top of being aggressively sexual towards everyone, constantly threatening to attack everyone, and making these awful fucking butchered references. The CEO of Dreamloop has gone on the record to argue that they care deeply about diversity and representation, but like, if you do, it doesn't show in the characters you wrote. Gio's misogyny is never really addressed, and everyone just overlooks it. His transphobia is the same, and you have the only trans character in the game actively becoming his friends in most routes. You have Ava dropping transphobic slurs, Sasha dropping ableist slurs, and just in general the ableism inherent to how you've written Annika that should make you feel deeply ashamed of yourself as a human being. The only grace I can possibly give you is that I think this is genuinely an issue of incompetence rather than malice. That you were trying to be representative of a diverse group of people, but are just bad writers. Like, I know this is gonna sound corny, I know this is gonna be whatever, but I do love having NB characters in games, and I love we're getting more of them in games right now, with Venture and Clove from Overwatch and Valorant respectively being the obvious examples. I need to make it clear that my issue with Sasha is not that they are non-binary. That isn't the problem here. It is nothing remotely close to being the problem here. The problem is that this is a genuinely bigoted interpretation of a queer person. Someone with no personality outside of sexual harassment, lying, murder, and drag race quotes. Your representation sucks, and no amount of like, half our VAs are queer will erase that. Diversity in games is good, but what you're doing isn't diversity. It's caricature, it's parody, it's mockery. Whether it's how you portray queerness, how you portray gender, or how you portray disability, I genuinely thought that characters like Sasha and Annika must have been written by committee on fucking 4chan before looking at the Dreamloop team, because I could not believe that these were written with the sincere attempt to represent diverse people. Also, if you truly care about diversity, you'd create original queer characters rather than just handing Sombra to Dolly and asking it to make a legally distinct version of her for you to use. Also, their voice acting is horrendous. It's the same VA as Naima and Naomi, going over 3 on delivering a quality performance here, and it's just so bad. Sasha sometimes sounds like they were a 60-year-old Russian who's smoking 3 packs a day since they were 12, sometimes sounds Mexican, sometimes sounds Italian, and just generally pulls from anywhere and everywhere. Presumably, if I'm being charitable, this is meant to be a reference to them hiding where they're from. But like, if Ava's allowed to sound like a fucking Valley girl when she's from Estonia, and Isak's allowed to sound like a character with a 2-episode arc as Cam's rival on a later season of Modern Family when he is from Norway, then Sasha doesn't need to have this whole wonky, inconsistent performance. Also, if you're gonna write in a million Drag Race quotes, maybe have your VA, I don't know, watch the things their character is referencing so they can actually get the inflection right. Drag Race is extremely quotable, and there are a million quote compilations on YouTube. If you really wanted to, you could put together your own compilation and just hand those to the VA. Then again, the quotes are almost always incorrectly deployed, whether it's missing a beat in the original quote, misunderstanding its original meaning, or just changing it up to make it sound like you were worried to get sued by RuPaul for ripping off their catchphrases. So you kinda did put the VA in a bad position. Also, again, where is Sasha supposed to be from? Like, continentally, because all their cultural references are extremely American despite the rest of the roster being European. When they're not sexually harassing other contestants or threatening them with violence, they're almost always just misquoting RuPaul's Drag Race and occasionally throwing in some Tiffany Pollard lines like, I prom. What's a prom? Half a promise. And it is only ever the American Drag Race franchise that's referenced too. It's not even European versions. Sasha Velour's wig reveal comes up multiple times. Roxy Andrews being left at a bus stop comes up multiple times. They'll say shit about walking the children in nature or teleporting us to Mars or whatever else. But crucially, it's always just a little bit wrong. Like, it has the most how do you do fellow kids energy of all time, except it's coming from a character who is supposed to be genuinely immersed in this shit. The writing of all of Inescapable's characters is inexcusably bad. If I was playing a free itch.io Danganronpa fan game with these characters, they'd still be underwhelming. But this game is $50 USD and is supposedly a serious attempt at storytelling by professionals. The character designs are, at best, derivative of other better characters in other better games, and at worst are ham-fisted attempts to skewer caricatures of real-life people in a way that's clearly bitter and spiteful without being interesting at all. If this was a parody of the games it's pretending to be, it would still be bad because even the worst Danganronpa characters still have something going on. There are characters I hate in those games who, when they die, I'm still sad about it. When/if characters like Gundam or Hyoko or Korekyo or Celestia or Kazuichi die, not spoiling which of them actually do if any, I'm still sad when they're gone. There's no point at which I'm sad when an inescapable character dies because aside from the writing being weak and ineffective at building tension for any of their deaths, there's nothing missing from the game when a character dies. A lesson that gets hammered home when you play through the routes where nobody dies and you have to spend a full 180 days with them alive. The only other death game I've ever played where I was wishing a majority of the roster would just fucking die was Zero Time Dilemma, and that was at least partially due to the fact I was sick of Junpei and Akane's shit after 3 games with them. The characters have no coherent motivation for anything they do, meaning that everything from murder to romance to capitalism to teamwork comes out of nowhere, goes nowhere, and ends nowhere. The game itself sucks ass, and we're gonna get into the routes in the story soon to talk about that, but these characters are nearly universally irredeemable regardless of what story they were in. People who've been in streams when I've been playing this have only ever been sad about a character death because they've been hoping it would be someone else, but overwhelmingly they've just asked when does somebody else actually fucking die, and I have to tell them that for most of the routes the answer is going to be never. Like I said earlier, if there was an option in this game to make Harry kill everyone and then himself on day 20, it would legitimately be the only ending most players would enjoy. The worst part about any of the characters dying is that their deaths are usually completely nonsensical and come out of nowhere and make the experience even worse, because now you're stuck on the island with even more incoherently stupid dipshits that you don't want to be around. Whether we're talking about the murderers having no motivation, no logic, and completely abandoning their established character to become someone entirely different, and always someone worse, or the people quote-unquote solving the cases acting like morons throughout. Now, one last thing before we get into the separate routes. Part 4. Shit I hate about the first 60 days. Now, I described the first 60 days of this game earlier, but I was generally trying to be neutral about that. Now that you know what kind of awful roster we're dealing with, let's get back to talking about those first 60 days and why they suck. Like I said earlier, the game doesn't pick a route until the 60-day point, and each route can go in dramatically different directions. Sometimes it's a killing game, sometimes it's a quiz show, sometimes it's American Idol but without the singing for some reason. As a result, those first 60 days are spent doing a bunch of random shit on the island, and I want to talk about the random things about this portion of the game that I hate that just don't really fit in anywhere else. For example, the fish catching minigame. This is ostensibly a rhythm action game where you tap the button along with the music to catch the fish. However, the music is not remotely synced up to the indicators, and the indicators will appear at random sizes and sometimes too close together to even see when you're actually supposed to hit them because multiple will be in the target zone at once. Actually, let me just show you really quick. There are actually multiple achievements tied to this and they influence which route you go on. Namely, greed if you can beat Geo in a fishing competition, so its inadequacy as a minigame actually does matter. Speaking of inadequate minigames, there's also the arcade games, of which the game provides 3. The first is an asteroid shooter that's pretty painless and easy to beat if you can get lucky with a multi-shot power-up early on. The second is a Geometry Dash ripoff that nearly gave me a fucking heart condition on stream because it took probably 50 to 60 minutes total to top the leaderboard for the greed run, and I truly hated every moment of it. How do you manage to fail to explain the controls of a game where the only two mechanics are jumping and dashing? Well, I have an answer for you. You just don't tell the player that there's a secret dash jump if they jump at exactly the right moment in a dash, and that it's the only way to clear one of the random obstacles that can appear. There's also a game called Seagull Barbecue where you shoot seagulls out of the sky and try to get them to land on a barbecue. No, it does not make sense, and no, it is not good, and yes, I think you should have to go to prison if you make a game like this where there's only 2 sound effects that play each time you shoot a fucking seagull. I get that it's meant to have a retro arcade aesthetic, but given that you're also ripping off a 2013 iOS game, you could probably have made this work. Related, Inescapable on Switch has this really fun, really neat, very cute little bug where the game will randomly crash if your controller dies. When I said that one arcade game took me 50 to 60 minutes to beat, that's partially because I played for half an hour and then my controller died, deleting all my progress and forcing me to start again. And again, I do have a clip for this. Oh god. I think it's better to just like pick one bird to focus on instead of trying to get all of them in. No, well I kind of fucked that up because that one was going to go in on its own. Oh, that's fun. Wait, what do you mean that's... What fucking garbage game closes because the controller runs out of battery? I'm gonna fucking lose my mind. No, because we didn't save after that last thing either. I'm gonna fucking lose it. Once again, Dreamloop, you are not seeing heaven. There are a few trivia games throughout the first 60 days, and sometimes beyond, where you'll be asked a question and then we'll be able to ask the other characters for clues. This is universally useless. It's a futile exercise. The characters provide no useful insight, and you're basically just left to guess. This wouldn't matter much, except winning at these trivia games is necessary for going down the greed route, and also that it's really fucking annoying.
I think not.
That's not good. Unthinkable.
What the?
I don't think it's fair.
Mate. Not giving up.
Huh?
Give me some sugar.
Mate. Mate.
Super.
Early on in the game, you adopt a pet rock. I named him Bagel every time. Bagel is generally irrelevant except for the time when he's used as a murder weapon, and it makes me sad. Justice for Bagel. There's a spa that you have to build with the other contestants on the top of the volcano, although I'm not really sure why. It's occasionally the setting for something mildly interesting, and the little shed that it's built next to is the doorway to an underground lab where some stuff happens later in one route, but it's ultimately just kind of a weird thing where you have to build it before a really bad rainy season appears, I think. I'm not sure what happens if you refuse to build it. I built it each time, but given that it's essential for at least one route, I'm assuming it's just built by somebody eventually regardless. The game doesn't do anything to indicate that there even are multiple routes, or that the first 60 days are the way that they are, but maybe the worst part of this is that it's tied to which characters you interact with. You need to consistently interact with Ava and Annika for lust, Mia and Sasha for suspicion, Giovanni and Valerie for greed, and avoid all 6 of them for trust. Aside from this not being made clear, it also doesn't really make sense. There's a point in the game where you have an Alice in Wonderland dream and you need to kill one of the 4 people to add a point to one of the routes. Isak for suspicion, Lumi for lust, Valerie for greed, and Harrison for trust. Isak and Lumi are part of the safe bunch, so even if you do know about the multiple routes, it's kinda unclear why these are the 4 that are here or what they're supposed to represent. When I played the first time, I chose to kill Harrison because I just wanted this to be over. Actually, you know what, speaking of, let's talk about that Alice in Wonderland dream. One night, late in the 60 days, all characters get gassed in their hotel rooms, and it gives Harrison a weird nightmare where he finds Lumi, Isak, and Valerie having a tea party. It starts out kinda normally for the most part, again, consider the participants and remember I'm being relative here, but then rapidly devolves into Lumi begging you to fuck her to death, Isak being Isak, and Valerie begging for death via song like we're in the Tumblr OC Danganronpa version of Cats. Harrison at some point forgets who he is, and the other characters alternate between telling him to kill them and to kill himself. This dream is a complete waste of time, very stupid, and also honestly pretty uncomfortable. It also never happens again like this, and that is the only small mercy of this game.
Give up? You've given up before.
I'm sorry, but that's just rude, innit?
I mean, I would like to make love with you in the sauna. We can have so much fun. All the girls can.
Good God. Well, I mean, it's not like that. The cakes look delicious.
Scream!
The heck? Val? What is going on with you 3?
Don't you see I try, Harrison? I'm not just a spoiled princess. Do I have to lift my skirt so you can see me?
No!
No, let me. See? I'm already naked.
You don't even have a Oh God, put your clothes back on!
You want everything, don't you?
I...
Bite every cake, lick every nipple.
Choke on your insatiable greed, Harrison!
Choke on each word left unspoken!
Joke on my tongue, Harrison. I know how much the sauna turns you on. Give up and just love Wonderland. Don't feel guilty for what you love, Harrison. Maybe even, sometimes, together. Maybe you'd like to kill me?
What the... the hell?
Say good night! Then kill me with the words you choke on, Harrison! Don't worry, Harrison. I have insurance and good lawyers. Your sanity dies, bite by bite, sip by sip!
You are the ever-ticking mechanism of perpetual entropy! Lavish in your plentiful ineptitude! A Cyrillical masterpiece!
We all know you failed on purpose.
No,
Prodigy, I think not! Deep down, you know that, right? Lazy, pathetic, a fraud driving a bus in the night.
Look at Harrison! saintly crucified on each cross between indolence and desolation. You might as well kill me.
Love. Your love is killing me, Harrison. I love loving you. Use me. I'm yours. I'm just for you to use. Use me. Love me. Kill me softly. Kill me with your lips before Mia finds out.
Do it, Harrison! You have to survive somehow!
Stop! Stop pulling me!
I'm just like you, Harrison! Why can't you see me?
I love your excuse, Harrison. Lie with me with your love.
Trust me, Harrison! You have to kill me! Here be lions!
I can't move. Let go!
Harrison, you need me. The gods wait beyond Wonderland. I will be your savior, but only if you kill me.
We are gods here, Harrison! In Wonderland, you can get anything you wish for! Entertain the viewers, Harrison! Kill me! Trust in your survival!
Harry, I'm so close. Together in Wonderland and beyond. I just need you to kill me, Harrison. Ah! If you don't know who to kill.
If you want to escape.
Perhaps kill, Harrison.
Are we truly all mad here? I don't know who you are anymore.
I mentioned it earlier, but each character in this game is assigned a color, which is fairly common for stuff like this. You want your characters in game to be immediately identifiable, and a signature color is a good way to help do that. However, Inescapable is not helping itself here because it often just picks the wrong colors. I mean, sometimes it's pretty close. Daan's green, Gio's peach, Annika's light blue, Valerie's yellow, and Harrison's red all generally make sense. Sasha's pink also kind of makes sense, although it could probably be more emphasized, or realistically should probably be purple. But then you get both Ava and Mia who look like they should be red. But you can't do that because Harrison's already red. So you give Ava a light pink color that mostly works for her character even if it's not super emphasized in her design, and you give Mia a dark blue like her scarf. However, Lumi clearly should have been blue, but since Mia already took that, she's instead given a weird turquoise that doesn't match any of the colors of her design. Francisca and Isak are easily the worst offenders here, being given a bright yellow and dark purple respectively. Francisca's color is clearly green, but that's Daan's, and the only other alternative might be blue for her jeans, but that's also taken, so they just gave her a leftover. Or so I thought. Same with Isak, who clearly should have been red or black, but is instead given purple for no discernible reason. At least, not if you're looking at it in terms of Inescapable. However, if you're looking at it in terms of the characters that they are ripping off, Kazuichi Soda and Gundam Tanaka, suddenly those colors seem like they make a little bit more sense. All of this indicates that the character design process was lazy and incoherent with no effort or thought put into these characters coexisting coherently. Also, I just need to talk about voice acting and writing. Voice acting is hard, and I will not pretend otherwise, but I've seen small visual novels with absolutely kick-ass voice acting before, and this isn't one of them. Half the characters have the wrong accent for their locations, and most of the others sound underpaid at best. The decision to triple up on the VA for Sasha, Naomi, and Naima is particularly baffling given that they are some of the characters you hear from most frequently, and yet they're all given to a voice actor who's struggling with any of them, much less all of them. The writing is bad, don't get me wrong, and it lends to all the worst possible tendencies of this genre, but good writing can't save this game from bad voice actors and bad voice direction. Some of these lines were clearly just read objectively wrong, and they still went, fuck it, we'll roll with it. And I'd say that they stick out like a sore thumb, except it happens so often that it's like a whole hand full of sore thumbs. The bad voice acting isn't limited to the first 60 days, but right out of the gate you're smacked in the face with it during the introduction. Also, not every voice actor is terrible. Francisca's voice actor is generally pretty solid, and her writing is uniquely tolerable among the roster. Daan's writing is dumb, and his VA sounds like he's sounding out each syllable sometimes, but given that he's meant to be a very stupid character, it usually works out okay. I also don't want to put full blame on the VAs here, because a lot of the issues can clearly be pinned on some terrible voice direction. Dreamloop needed to have a better, more coherent understanding of what they expected from each of their characters, needed to communicate it better to their VAs, and needed to insist on retakes until they got it. Characters are also clumsily written to exposit useless information in the most tell-don't-show way imaginable, while also making every character nearly immediately insufferable. Meanwhile, they deliberately avoid saying anything useful. I mentioned this in the trivia games bit, but characters will inexplicably refuse to tell you anything relevant at key points. Solving a murder? They're gonna hide evidence from you right until the end for no good reason. Trying to do trivia about your fellow contestants? None of them will give even the slightest hint that it might be about them. Even in the dirt and gossip sections of the app, the information is generally useless. Learning that Gio was in a porn film called Pup Play and hosts BDSM parties doesn't actually mean anything at any point in any route. It's all just so dumb. This is more of a general grievance, but the length of this game is just way too much for what's being done here. For one, there's multiple routes, but there's no way to just revert to a certain save point and go down a different branching route, the way you can with games like Zero Escape. Since your route is determined by your first 60 days, you need to restart those 60 days, and since the game doesn't tell you what you need to do for those 60 days, or give you any indicator what decisions are leading to what outcomes, you basically need to open up a guide to deliberately end up on any given route. My first playthrough was the only one where I played quote-unquote properly, in the sense that I read everything out loud unless it was voice acted, didn't use a guide, and tried to make the most natural decisions to me. That playthrough, start to finish, ended up on the Suspicion route and took me about 27-ish hours to finish across 6 streams over on Twitch, with 11 of those hours just being the first 60 days. For subsequent playthroughs, I was rushing it, skipping nearly all previously seen dialogue unless it was voiced, and just reading in my head instead of reading out loud for anything that I hadn't seen before. I also used a guide for these routes because it genuinely would have been impossible to accidentally stumble into some of them, and even with that, each route took about 10 hours each to complete from day 1 to the end credits. That's way too long for a game like this. The 180 days is way too many, and the developers tacitly admit this by having Harrison regularly simply skip random morning, afternoon, or evening segments, and occasionally, like I said earlier, whole days and weeks. There's actually no route that goes from day 1 to day 80. Greed only goes to day 97. Trust only goes to day 111 and then skips to day 140 before ending. Suspicion only goes to about day 131 and then fast forwards to day 177 before ending. And Lust makes it all the way to 154. However, all 4 routes take about as long to finish, making it clear that the developers really just wanted to give themselves as much buffer room as possible, rather than picking an appropriate, better amount of time. This game should have been 90 days long max, and should have focused on telling a tighter story rather than this rambling, meandering one full of pointless dialogue that doesn't go anywhere or mean anything. Lastly, I need to talk about how easy it would have been to just have a point system made clear to the player to indicate what routes they were making progress on. Disco Elysium openly tells you how many points you have towards each attribute, and it does nothing but make the game clearer to progress through. And that's a game where it's also way more obvious which route you're headed down because Harry's decisions are almost sarcastically upfront. This is an issue a lot of visual novels have. For example, Buried Stars is amazing, I love that game, but given how important some key decisions are, you'd think there'd be a bit more of an indicator to distinguish them from the mountains of other decisions and dialogue options that you're making. But it's one that generally becomes excusable if the writing is good. Like, sure, it's annoying that Buried Stars does that, and it undermines some of its really good writing, but it's still ultimately very good. Inescapable has none of that, and crucially, is also not nearly as linear as Buried Stars is. It's too open-ended, making it too hard to predict what actions will have what outcomes or what you're doing on top of not communicating anything to the audience. Like, you can assume in Buried Stars that constantly siding with Hyasung will get you a favorable Hyasung ending, but why on earth would you think that talking to Annika a lot would lead to the Lust route? Like, that's fucked. Why would you think that playing arcade games would lead to greed? The arcade games don't give you any prizes. Like, there's no greed involved in that. Why would you think that talking to Mia, the character the game sets up as your sidekick, would lead to suspicion and not trust? How would you ever know that you need to thread the needle and basically never make a decision or talk to half the roster for 5 to 10 hours in order to land on the trust route? You don't even know these routes exist. I have a lot more random grievances about this, but in the interest of time and getting to the shit I've got actual grievances with, we're gonna end this section here.
I so deserve this. We all do, after being gassed.
Huh? What do you mean, gassed?
Oh, a gift indeed!
Well, shit.
What are you talking about?
No fucking way!
I am the sober one, yet I don't understand. Please explain.
You've heard a lot about trust, lust, suspicion, and greed so far. But what actually happens after day 60? Well, let's get into it. I'm going to present these in the order that I played them so you can get a feel for why I am the way I am about this game. Starting with Part 5, Suspicion. The first time I played through Inescapable, I played it properly. I didn't skip any dialogue, didn't look up a guide, and didn't really know what I was doing. I just played the game the way that felt natural, and I ended up on the Suspicion route. Now, I also didn't know about the first 60 days thing, so all I knew was that suddenly, after about 10 hours, the plot started to happen to me. Or rather, around me, since Harrison is generally useless in this route. Something that will soon become a trend, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just start at the beginning. The Suspicion route is the closest this game comes to fulfilling its advertising as an actual Danganronpa-style killing game, although with a couple key caveats. For one, killing someone does not come with any rewards, nor does catching the person who killed someone. A killing game requires risk and reward, and in Danganronpa, killing another student and getting away with it comes with freedom, often alongside another reward to serve as motivation or temptation, while getting caught means a brutal execution. There also needs to, be some sort of actual structure involved in all of this. Danganronpa makes it clear why you should kill, but also what happens next. Inescapable doesn't do that. Murder is just murder for murder's sake. Killing someone doesn't increase your winnings, doesn't allow you a chance for freedom, and doesn't actually lead the in-universe show to impose any consequences, regardless of whether or not you're caught. The cast is entirely responsible for handling justice in their own way, but you can kill someone and still collect your 500,000 euros at the end of it. And you can escape the island with your prize money regardless of whether or not you kill someone. In a game like Your Turn to Die, the players don't want to kill anyone, but the rules of the game force them to kill at least 2 people in each main game, either the sacrifice plus a non-keymaster or everyone except the sacrifice and the person they choose to protect. The players don't really have a ton of agency over who becomes the sacrifice, keymaster, sage, or one of the commoners. The characters still have the responsibility of working out what they'll do with the cards they're dealt, and importantly, are given real agency. This route begins with the murder of Valerie d'Orléans, who has been repeatedly stabbed in the chest in the game room.
I bet you can't.
Ava was also attacked in the room, being superficially stabbed in the back of her hip, but she survives. The second you see this setup, you might immediately figure out, oh, this is just Danganronpa 1 Chapter 1. Valerie attacked Ava and failed, so Ava turned around and murdered her and was trying to cover it up. At least that was my prediction in my first playthrough, and it was exactly correct. After the murder happens, you become the official island detective and must try to solve the murder with Mia, your trusty sidekick.
Anyway, you might want to look into who did the deed. She means you actually have to do that, by the way. I'll be giving you a high-tech solution that can help you solve this situation.
Solve this situation?
Yes. Harrison, you will check your phone after this call and find a useful app. It's called Island Sleuth. Only Harrison will have access to the tool. There's no need for the rest of the onlookers to verify if they have this app.
What does that mean?
It means that Harrison is in charge of this, let's say, investigation.
However, everyone is entirely uncooperative. You investigate the body but are not allowed to notice certain details, like the fact that she's been bashed in the head with something, namely bagel. And other characters who did notice will simply not tell you until the final trial. Please imagine me putting the heaviest possible air quotes around the word trial here, because what actually happens is that everyone gathers in a bar, Harrison blindly fumbles around until Sasha reveals what happened, then you do a Danganronpa-style comic book reassembling of the events before getting the classic, "It was you're the murderer" thing that happens at the end.
Ava pulled off a very dramatic moment. At the time, we likely thought it's just Ava being Ava. But it turns out, Ava made a deal with the sisters to gain intel.
Intel about Valerie.
Yes, that information, we don't know what it's about.
And we shouldn't care about it at all.
Yeah, we shouldn't.
Ava was blackmailing Valerie using those secrets. So Valerie felt threatened. And because of that, she took a knife from the kitchen a few days before. She carried it in her purse as it was easy to conceal.
Clearly she was under pressure. Her mood was explosive during her last few days, explaining her violent argument with Francisca. Ava was constantly energetic.
Definitely blackmailing Valerie was a source of joy.
So Valerie calls Ava over, a meeting scheduled for 5 p.m. via message.
And the producers attempted to spread everyone else around, to give the pair enough space to do whatever's interesting.
The cameras were ready. Someone just needed to say action. Ava assumed Val wouldn't hurt her, thus carried no weapon. But while they were inside the room, something happened that made Ava turn her back on Valerie. And Val did the unthinkable. She stabbed Ava in the back.
But the wound was not severe. Val's wrists were too frail to wield a knife properly. And Ava's adrenaline must have kicked in too. The hunted became the hunter.
So Ava smacked Valerie with bagel.
Valerie must have stumbled senseless and dropped the knife. Ava took the knife and stepped unconscious Valerie 4 times until she wasn't breathing anymore.
Ava must have broken Valerie's phone after this. She knew it would connect her to Valerie's death and was likely already planning to have her own phone messages erased.
The producers would do their part indeed.
But this was already too much for a bleeding Ava. Even Valerie's weak attack was able to bring the stronger Ava down. She tries to leave, but falls unconscious before she's able to do anything else.
And then, moments later, we arrived at the scene. Ready to mourn the two unfortunate victims.
Like, truly cannot express how much of a Danganronpa ripoff this was. It's insane and also bad. It turns out Ava was blackmailing Valerie with some information that I don't think is ever actually revealed to us, and certainly is not particularly important. Valerie tries to get back at Ava, traps her in the game room, threatens her with the knife, Ava brushes it off, Valerie gets angry, tries to stab her, can't go through with it, drops the knife, Ava turns around, bashes her over the head, and then repeatedly stabs her in the chest. And then kind of just treats it like it was self-defense, but also like it was for television purposes, so who knows anymore?
Uh-huh. You don't like it when I'm the victim? Well... Have it your way. You're right. I did it. I killed her. All for the show. Oh, still got it.
Anyways, the important thing is that Ava is found guilty, and while some characters want to kill her as a punishment, the majority decides against it and instead sentences her to solitary confinement. They note that this is just torture and that it is also immoral, but hey, it's better than murder. Baffling. Daan volunteers to be her jailer and is just extremely cruel towards her throughout, both because he's an asshole about justice, as already described, but also because he had a crush on her, and now he's mad that he feels like she lied to him. Ava goes pretty insane in solitary, unsurprisingly, because that's what solitary confinement is designed to do in the real world, but we move on from here. Anyways, after a few weeks, the next murder is committed against Giovanni, who disappears for a week and then is found dead halfway up the mountain, half naked and covered in wounds. He has scrawled a couple half-finished letters in the grass that sure look like they spell out an I and an L, but the letters are smudged and the characters can't tell if they're letters or numbers, and oh good fucking god, it's still Danganronpa 1 Chapter 1 Leon vs. Sayaka 11037 shit. 2 murder cases, and they are both just one Danganronpa chapter. Mostly. This one is also partially kinda Danganronpa V3 Chapter 3 with the weird culty ritual shit going on to disguise the murder, but mostly it's a 11037 thing. The characters eventually figure out that I and L means Isak and Lumi.
I received an anonymous message pointing towards Gio's alleged suspicious activities.
Gather around.
Isak told us he wanted to organize Yule, but it was a ruse to mask their activities. Then Giovanni injured his back carrying the Christmas delivery.
Something Isak decided to use in their favor.
Meanwhile, Lumi and Isak stole the corn that was supposed to be for Isak's ritual. And they took it through the tunnel to the underground lab.
Lumi gave a massage to Gio to make his back problem worse. And Giovanni ate the pavlova full of substitute sugar and took too much insulin. Then he headed to the volcanic spa to heal his back.
By Lumi's recommendation. Isak made sure he was seen at the resort, so Lumi took over. She took the tunnel, attacked a weakened Gio, and wheelbarrowed him through the tunnels. The producers tried to cover Gio's abduction. Torturing goes on for days. The two are rarely seen at the same time and never for long. They even pretended they weren't spending time together anymore. Yet they were preparing to kill Gio in a very flashy way, by crucifixion. So Isak sold the idea of the Yule ritual as a trap to catch Gio, to guarantee that I would see Isak far away from the crime scene and Gio on the cross.
The triumphal defeat of Giovanni Lombardi.
Isak wrote the note to Mia which forced her to stay away from the resort. Without an alibi, she'd be a major suspect.
On that night, they brought Gio to the top of the volcano, and he fell down the mountain at 5 a.m.
Sorry to interrupt, but it was 4:35 to 4:40 a.m. when he fell. He probably died later around 5 a.m.
But... right.
It was too late and dark to check where the body fell, so they assumed no one would find the body immediately. Then Isak and Lumi rushed to the resort to show their faces and escort the Yule party. Our group left at 6 a.m. without Isak. He followed closely behind. Lumi then tried to steer us from the body, but she didn't know where it was.
At 8 a.m., Harrison, Annika, and Lumi find Gio's body.
Lumi pretended to examine the body and scratched part of the L. Then proceeded to give me a false hour of death to correspond with their alibis.
You!
Taking every opportunity to frame Daan and Mia.
They returned the wheelbarrow using Lumi's patrol and discarded and dismantled the crucifix. They also hastily tossed the sugar on the jungle floor before the room searches.
After that, it was just a matter of watching how well their plan fooled us.
See, Lumi fell for Isak, who's somehow fucking Lothario in this game, and they worked together to poison Giovanni because it turns out he was secretly a diabetic who never actually used his blood sugar monitor to check and see if he needed more insulin, and just went based off of vibes. Somehow, Isak and Lumi found out about this, so they asked the producers to send them an insane amount of corn under the guise that it was for a pagan Nordic Christmas ritual of some sort, which the two of them used to produce a sugar alternative that would make Gio think he'd eaten a bunch of sugar and needed an insulin injection, but which would actually lead him to basically overdose on insulin, making him drowsy and vulnerable. Lumi and Isak found him in the sauna, piled him into a wheelbarrow, and wheeled him up to the top of the island through a secret passageway. Oh, right, there's also a secret passageway that Lumi, Isak, Sasha, Francisca, and I think even Mia knew about, but nobody would tell you about. And that takes you all the way to the very top of the volcano. They kept him prisoner in a lab underneath there for a week while Lumi performed sadistic experiments on him, stabbing and slashing him and then making sure he didn't die so she could just see what happens. After about a week, the man was nearly dead, and Isak decided that a fitting way to kill the Catholic, again, Isak hates the church in case you forgot, would be to fucking crucify him at the top of the mountain. And Lumi goes along with this. They try to do it, but they fuck up and drop him off the mountain while he's still alive. That's how he manages to write out their initials in his own blood. Somehow, he survives being tortured for a week, dropped off a mountain, and then just lives long enough to write those two letters, and then he dies.
What a glorious death! At the hands of the mighty and the divine! A majestic ruse! From the pavlova to his swan song. I'm amazed you lowly animals were able to see through a nun-sized silky veins. I commend you for that.
Anyways, Sasha and Francisca are furious that their friend, the man who was openly transphobic and misogynistic towards them respectively and never apologized or changed his ways, was murdered. But they refuse to help you with the investigation until the trial, where they reveal all the information. I just cannot stress how much this fucking sucks. Like, you spend a lot of time trying to investigate and these characters actively refuse to help you and then get mad when you don't know things that you couldn't possibly know because they actively hid them from you. Anyways, Lumi and Isak are found guilty and are also sentenced to solitary confinement. Thankfully, at this point, we're getting close to the end. We have 9 survivors now, 6 innocents and 3 murderers. However, someone's decided we need to thin those numbers a bit, and they concoct a plan. At one point, all the characters decide that they're going to have some apple crumble for a dessert, with a few characters remarking that it is remarkably sweet. There are 2 crumbles, and Harrison, Ava, Isak, and Lumi are all served pieces from one, while the others are given pieces from the second. Suddenly,
Huzzah, Islanders. How do you do? I've heard you had a birthday party. I have a present, of course. I'm no party pooper. But before that, you might be wondering, who is this person under a sexy gas mask and extra baggy clothes? That doesn't really matter. What matters is, this island is sick. Filthy killers prey without prey of their own. Their stench reaches even my well-guarded nose. Some people tried to purify this island with pretty words and coward inaction. But you can call me the garbage collector, because I'm about to collect me some garbage and light the match. Let us bask in the righteous fire. Let us behold justice's ire. Let us be reborn, pure as the morning phoenix, the dawn's light. Eva, the socialite, your gossip killed another. I'm the judge. I find you irredeemable. Isak, the poser. Lumi, the heartless. You dare to play with another's life. I'm the executioner. You can't escape me. Poison fills your body now.
Poison?
The clock won't stop ticking for you. You are already dead. Or will be. In some days. You get it. You're smart. And what a present without wrap or bow. And for me, you must all think my mask protects me from your justice. But my mask keeps you from my unbridled wrath. I'm the inevitable one, the scourge. I'm the terror that flaps in the night. 'Tis a golden path, the one I walk. Goodbye, bitches.
Ava, Isak, Lumi, and Mia all come down with a mysterious, painful illness. They're struggling to breathe, their throats are burning, they can't even swallow food, like it's bad for them. Lumi, the chemist, tries to figure out what's going on, but her notes about the island's fauna are stolen and then tampered with to make Harrison think there's no cure. Eventually, the three killers die while Mia dies in Harrison's arms as he sobs.
Annika! What happened?
Eva! Eva is dead!
Auf Wiedersehen. Meine Liebe. Lumi. She's no longer with us.
Harry, you gotta help.
Isak? No. Oh God. Mia!
It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. Promise me. Find the bastard who did this. Don't let them get away with this. Don't trust anyone. Any of them could be the killer.
Mia, you don't need to speak if you're hurting. Please.
Listen. Sasha left the room too soon. Figure out how they... The phone.
What?
Promise me. Talk to my siblings. Tell them.
I promise.
Danke.
Mia? You know the drill by now.
The five survivors, Harrison, Sasha, Daan, Annika, and Francisca, gather for one final trial, in which Harrison reveals that it wasn't one of them, it was all of them.
I know who did it. You're all in this together! I don't get it! With everyone involved, this could have been such a simple, flawless plan. Too many steps, too many damn breadcrumbs to follow. Bombarded by clues I was, true or false. So scripted, yet so clumsy. Everything over-fabricated, overproduced. You were putting on a show? This has De Winters written all over it too. That's probably why Sasha made the call to the producers. That was the sign. The show must go on.
Let's stop the play, guys. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Filhos da puta, they were getting away with all of it. We just had to. Giovanni deserved justice. For this.
Their death brought me no joy, only justice.
I must! Honey can't. They deserved it! What has Honey done?
The victims were not sick, but had actually been poisoned with the fruit of the manzanilla tree, the manzanilla de la muerte, or the little apple of death. The manzanilla tree, for those who aren't aware, because I wasn't before this, is a fucked up little bit of nature that's basically just personally offended that any life on Earth exists and is actively trying to remedy that. Its apples will produce the symptoms mentioned, plus many more if eaten, but it's not just the apples. The sap will give you hideous, painful blisters if you touch the tree. But it's not even like you have to make direct physical contact. The leaves are also capable of producing these poisons, and it takes very little of the sap to actually fuck you up. Like, sheltering under it during the rain will also poison you, because a drop of rainwater that has made contact with a tree can pick up some sap and deposit it on your skin. It used to be used to poison water supplies by native tribes during war in areas where it grows, and in most places where it grows, there's a legal requirement to put up warnings like giant red X's and big red ribbons to make sure no one runs into it by accident. There is, however, a cure. Arrowroot poultices can be used as antidotes, but that data was edited out of Lumi's journal. So, how'd they do it? Well, I'm not sure how they found out about the manzanilla tree, but it was probably Lumi's investigation. They found one of them on the island and sent Francisca, Daan, and Annika to help recover some of the apples. At least some of them ended up with blisters from the sap, but they did recover the apples. Next, they baked 2 apple crumbles, one with normal apples, one with the manzanilla de la muerte. The death apples were supposed to kill the killers, but apparently they accidentally served one to Harrison as well. However, Mia thought that Harrison's piece looked bigger than hers, so she swapped them when no one was looking, accidentally sealing her own fate. The other 3 received their poison as planned and died a brutal death. None of the 4 killers, Annika, Francisca, Sasha, or Daan, are particularly apologetic about what they've done, even when it comes to Mia. They basically just say, yeah, we did what needed to be done. Sucks about Mia, though. This happens, pretty late in the game, and after the trial, Harrison just shuts himself in his room and doesn't do anything else until the ship finally comes to pick them up at the end.
I am going to my room. Don't ever talk to me. Don't ever even speak in my general direction. So long, you bastards.
The other characters generally kind of try to reach out to him and see if he's okay, but he refuses to talk to them. Understandably, frankly. In this route, Harrison's a dumbass who can't do shit, but he's not an evil person. He's surrounded by murderers who don't seem apologetic or remorseful, and he doesn't know what to do about it. When he gets home, he goes back to being a bus driver in London and is mocked by the people who watch the show and doesn't do anything with the money he got. The route ends with him visiting Mia's family and informing them of the news of where their older sister disappeared to 6+ months ago and what happened to her.
Hallo? Wer sind Sie?
Sorry. Ich spreche nicht Deutsch.
But you are?
I am, what?
Speaking German.
I meant to say I can't speak German. I've only learned some words. Anyway, my name is Harrison. I'm a friend of Maria's.
Mia? Moment, sagte Mia?
Yes, I have some news. Could I come inside? Tell you all about it? In an orderly fashion?
Tja, okay. You can come in.
Thank you.
And then roll the credits. Now, this route sucks. It's poorly written, poorly paced, and ends on some real bullshit. I get that the writers thought the quadruple murder at the end was a good way to wrap things up with a thrilling climax, but it was just bizarre, and especially out of character for Annika of all people. The other 2 murders not only ripped off Danganronpa, but ripped off a notoriously frustratingly simple case that was very easy to solve in the game for an individual, and then everyone took a bunch of stupid pills right before the class trial. Again, 11037 is notorious for a reason. Inescapable took that case, split it in half, and then had the murders happen for basically no reason. Ava effectively just says she did it because of self-defense, which it isn't, and because it made for good TV, which I don't think it really does. Lumi went from quiet and shy to a cold-blooded Unit 731 level freak, and Isak took the Gundam Tanaka Korekiyo Shinguji ripoff to the extreme by becoming a fanatical cultist. And remember, these 3 people were a niche Estonian micro-influencer, a Finnish PhD candidate, and a Norwegian celebrity jeweler, respectively, less than 6 months before the end of the show. The other 4 conspiring to kill all the killers makes no sense. I mean, Francisca and Sasha working together makes some sense, but Daan and Annika joining up to brutally torture people to death is genuinely completely out of character for them, especially when it comes to killing Mia. It's stupid, it's pointless, it's a twist for the sake of a twist without knowing why twists are good. It brings to mind the famous quote from Roger Ebert criticizing Battlefield Earth's absurd overuse of Dutch angles. Quote, "The director, Roger Christian, has learned from better films that directors sometimes tilt their cameras, but he has not learned why," end quote. Dreamloop has learned from better games that writers sometimes include dramatic plot twists and murders and secret character traits only revealed under pressure, but they have not learned why. And that lack of intentionality, competence, or actual interest in exploring what makes this genre tick leads to a profoundly unsatisfying ending to the game. However, that's just the first ending I got, and I promise you, it's about to get worse. Part 6. Lust. Now, I knew I wanted to make this video after finishing the Suspicion route, and much of the script was originally written the day after I finished that route while hanging out at my dad's shop while it was still fresh, and I was still angry about it. However, after about 6,000 words, I decided I needed to be comprehensive. I needed to play through each route and ensure that I saw all of it. But what route to go with next? Trust felt like the one I should save for last, so it was between greed and lust. Now, I tried to look up more about this game at this point, and outside of the handful of replies to Dreamloop's tweets, there wasn't really much to go off out there. However, what is out there is mostly just people saying the lust route was creepy and gross and they hated it. So of course, I wanted to know just how bad it could get. Viewer, I promise you, it is worse than you think. This time, I cracked open a guide and rushed through the first 60 days and ended up pretty decisively on the lust route after about 5-ish hours. In this route, there is no murder, meaning, regrettably, we now have to live the full 180 days with Gio, Valerie, Ava, Lumi, Isak, and Mia. Instead, the show becomes a popularity contest.
Splendid. You're all gathered. I will be succinct. As you know, this show is an accumulation of interests. Ours and our viewers. Put bluntly, your viewers dictate your fate, based on your actions. As it so happens, you seem to be doing something right. Which means we don't get to nuke you yet. Yay for you, boo-hoo for me!
Thanks, I guess.
On to the announcement. Your personalities are clearly meant for the drama, so there's a twist in your survival. Not to mention they really like seeing one of you get risky. My, right to the camera, too. You even had me blushing a little bit. Just a bit. So we got this super cool idea since viewers loved it so much. Get ready and sit down, because you're gonna shit your pants!
There's no way Harry Boy did it. So why'd you call him?
You don't need to know that.
No, please. Humor me. I've nothing better to do anyway.
'Cause we can! What's your problem? Don't try to read between the lines. He was the last I contacted. Ease of access.
Yes, well, anyway.
Continuing. From here on out, there will be a popularity rating. Both the contestants and the audience will receive the option to vote.
Vote? Vote what? OMG, this is so cool. Great idea.
Dreadful idea. I want to go home, not to partake in a drama series.
What? Why? This seems excessive.
Fuckers! The next person who interrupts gets no supplies for a week! Shut up! The criteria for the voting are up to you. Vote for whom you like the most, for example. This will be a popularity competition, as I said.
If Suspicion was Danganronpa, Lust is horny buried stars minus the talented, interesting, well-designed characters. A new app for ranking contestants is added to everybody's phone, and contestants and fans are voting every 2 weeks for their favorites, with penalties for coming in last and rewards for placing high. First reward was, if I recall correctly, a live-streamed concert of a pop star of their choosing, which Ava won, and she chose a Lady Gaga parody. The losers would face penalties like being kicked out of their rooms for a week, or having a malicious rumor spread about them in the real world. Now, I'll be honest, it's hard to describe this route the same way I described Suspicion, because Suspicion at least follows a general narrative structure of setup, murder, investigation. Setup, murder, investigation. And Lust really doesn't. Lust is a popularity contest, so you're generally trying to interact with the other characters and the fans to become more popular. You could try to break this up into the 2-week voting periods, but each period kind of just blends into the next, and since Harrison has no way of receiving either a reward or a penalty most weeks, it doesn't really affect his story. While the overall narrative is the popularity contest, for Harrison, it's what the route is named for, Lust. This is about you trying to rizz up some women, and it's so fucking bad. For the popularity side of things, characters get suspicious of each other's motives when they do something nice, and are also trying to play things up for the camera. Most noticeably with Ava, who understands more than anyone that her job is to make good TV. She'll form showmances, start rumors and drama, and generally just be a messy bitch who'd undoubtedly get cast in the Estonian spin-off of House of Villains. However, it doesn't work super well because nobody else really seems to get what they're supposed to be doing. Like I said, each contestant has been given an app to rank each other, and they're evaluated based on their rankings every other week. However, it's never made clear how other people voted or why certain characters placed the way they did, no matter how you voted or how anyone else seems to have. And the reason for that is that it doesn't matter. This is basically just edgy Jackbox featuring everyone's first OCs, meaning that the audience vote is massively overwhelming any internal voting. The players don't learn this until the end though, so half the narrative of this route is driven by internal politicking for votes and ratings that literally cannot influence outcomes. The other half of this narrative though, like I said, is the romances. As you might have guessed by the name, Lust is about romance for Harrison, and it's... oh god, you guys, it's so fucking bad. Like, it's worse than you think. I was unwilling to keep doing this to experience every romance path because Harrison becomes truly the worst fucking person imaginable. But thankfully, there are achievements that tell us who all you can romance. You generally lead all 3 of these women on through the game until pretty late before handing one of them a love bracelet. Again, it's just a nail that's been carved into a circle by Isak, and that decides who you're romancing. Since I only did 1 romance, I'll explain to you what happened there, but I'll also briefly touch on the other 2 romances and why they suck without even having to explore them. First up, and the one I chose, is Masuda Ikabsind, which I'm pronouncing wrong, is Estonian for My Heart Longs for You. This is Ava's romance, and let me tell you, Harry sucks so fucking hard here.
What was that about some totally awesome bracelet you mentioned?
Actually, I had a bracelet custom made for you.
Me? Harks? Like, what, really?
I wanted to show you that I'm serious about my feelings. I love spending time with you, not just dating for the sake of the show.
Hun, sweetie, Harks. If you want to nail me, there's nicer ways to say it. LOL. I got a totally tubular idea.
Aren't you a playful one?
OMG, Harks? So shy. Am I like really your first kiss?
Let me convince you otherwise.
Pretty much as soon as they're official, Harry wants more. He asks Ava to open the relationship like a week after they start dating. He loses all his money because his popularity tanks, and that's one of the punishments, and tries desperately to win back the audience's favor, failing spectacularly all the way through. He becomes a horrendous attention whore in this route just in general, obsessing over the love of the fans, when I genuinely can't imagine why anyone would ever love him on either a personal or parasocial level.
Maybe I could spend the night in your room?
X-fucking-D.
I don't think he's meant to be this fucking unlikable. He's meant to show like what happens when you get too lost in the sauce of popularity and reality TV. But good fucking god is he unlikable. The only joy I've found in this game was watching Harrison become the outcast of the roster. And after the final vote, he walks away with absolutely nothing. He goes home with Ava and pressures her aggressively to film OnlyFans content, sell feet pics, and anything else that might get him famous again. She eventually decides, you know what, I can do better, and dumps him in the final cutscene of this route after seeing a hot man in gray sweatpants. Like I said, Ava's the only remotely interesting or funny character in this game, and it's great that Inescapable doesn't reward Harrison's insane bullshit. This is seemingly the most common romance option on Steam according to the achievements, with 16.1% of players getting this one.
Oh yes, I was dumping Harks. Harks, what do you call when the meat is more cooked than medium?
Huh? What? What does that have to do with anything? I don't know. Well done?
Yes, that's right. Done. Just like us. XOXO.
What? What the fuck? Ava!
Like cute guy with nice sweatpants. Wait up. Hello. Have you like heard of Joseph Darling? I'd rather be single than used and abused. Maybe I'll find love elsewhere. Best effing choice ever. Respect yourself, girl.
Next is Samara Narkort, which, again, pronouncing wrong. It's Swedish for the summer is short. This is Annika's romance. If you have learned anything about Annika up until this point, it is that she is a sweet cinnamon roll who deserved better. This is especially true in this route because even in the first 60 days to get into the lust route, you're feeling her up when she's pretending to be dead for a game.
I need to investigate the body of the murder victim now, who stays still and quiet.
Falling onto her and groping her chest.
Are you alright? Do you need first aid? Ani can rush over and get you a band-aid.
What? Sorry. I mean, wait, first aid?
And so much more. It is so predatory and creepy that I genuinely cannot imagine ever wanting to see this. And from what I can find online, nobody else seems willing to describe what actually happened here, which is a little concerning. It was the second most popular choice though, at 13.5% on Steam. Finally, there's Agarahem da Vizinha, which, again, pronouncing wrong, I'm sorry, it's Portuguese for neighbor's garage. According to Google Translate anyway. All these are according to Google Translate. I don't know if I'm saying any of these correctly or getting any of them right. You're gonna have to trust me on this, or forgive me if I'm wrong. Regardless, it's Portuguese, this is Francisca's romance, and realistically, this is the one of the three that probably has the best odds of succeeding. Francisca is a lot more willing to stand up for herself, she's generally no nonsense, but also canonically a pretty fun person to be around, and she's overall a mostly decent person by the standards of Inescapable characters.
I'm making a fool of myself.
You're doing better than I am. Hoping things will go better this time. I'm going to show people I'm unworthy of last place.
You're convincing me, ma'am.
That's great. What did you say before? Oh yes, good boy.
That being said, from what I can find, this relationship doesn't last either. Presumably because Harrison is a massive piece of shit in an irredeemable way in the lust route and she doesn't tolerate it either. Also, she is a kid, and I can't imagine Harrison as a stepfather because he most certainly is not the father that's stepping up for shit. This was only barely less popular than Annika's romance though, at 13.3% on Steam. The game generally hints towards Sasha and Mia also being on the table, but you ruin things with both of them. Sasha can kind of be a hookup.
Ooh, girl. Give me some sugar. Ooh, girl.
And Mia will get mad at you for using women as trophies, but that's it.
I want us to be happy together, to stroke your cheek and to kiss your lips. I want...
To think I still believe there was a chance for us to be friends. You're a despicable monster, Harrison.
Lumi is not an option for reasons that will become relevant later, but also because she was kidnapped by the show for some reason for a few weeks and then was kept under the island for a while before being returned, during which time you've already picked your trophy girlfriend. Importantly, none of the men on the island are even remotely flexible in their heterosexuality in the lust route, but the women and the NB very much so are. It's a little weird, especially considering that there is a lot of sexual innuendo between Gio and Daan in particular that sometimes also includes Harry, but it's just played off as a joke. So much for representation, I guess. Again, I cannot emphasize how much we will be circling back to this particular topic later. However, the absurdity of this route doesn't end there. Don't forget the popularity contest. Or, rather, the thing that's getting rigged because Isak has somehow once again Lothario'd his way into another woman's pants and has ruined everything. In this route, Isak starts suspiciously winning all the time and everyone's a bit confused because, he's just massively off-putting. That is, until it's revealed that Naomi, the producer sister with murder written in graphic font across her boobs in case you forgot, has madly fallen in love with him and has been rigging the votes in his favor. She has also declared that he cannot be harmed or negatively interacted with under the threat of nuking the entire island, so nobody can say shit to him or about him for about a month in-game. Eventually, however, the audience revolts because of course they fucking do. Reality competition shows, for those who don't know, are always produced and always have planned storylines, but you need to get there organically, and a producer falling in love with a contestant and openly rigging the results in his favor is like top tier bullshit. Again, I think the team at Dreamloop are fundamentally unaware of how human beings interact with each other, but I think they also never bothered to research how reality TV works either. Buried Stars, once again, is another game where reality TV, producer fuckery, social media, and popularity are major components of the narrative, including a contestant falling in love with a producer, and it's handled really, really well. It's possible to not only do this well, but to do it in a way that enhances your narrative and tells a story that otherwise couldn't be told, and Inescapable does not do that. Eventually, the producers decide to cut the season short by a couple weeks and do their final vote early. There will be 2 winners, 2 losers, and 2 fan favorites. And they aren't really told what the prizes will be for any of them other than that somebody will have to compete in the next season, because somehow I guess this is getting a season 2. However, in order to make it fair, Naomi is not only effectively purged as a producer as we're told, but is now part of the voting system as well. She can be ranked by the contestants in the audience as well, but she will not be on the island competing alongside them. She will also be allowed to keep doing producer stuff, I guess, so she's basically still a producer, but they've stopped letting her rig the vote? Baffling, I don't know how this is supposed to work. Harrison goes mad begging for votes and attention. It all flops and he ranks low. But not in the bottom 2 because that goes to Isak and Naomi. The top 2 are Daan and Mia when it's all said and done, and the fan favorites are Lumi and Gio, which... it's a popularity contest, and they didn't win, so they aren't the fan favorites. But okay, sure, why not? Daan and Mia have won, imagine the air quotes again here, the responsibility of hosting Inescapable 2 Frozen Love in Siberia, while Isak and Naomi will become contestants on that season. Gio and Lumi as fan favorites will get to tour the set in advance and get some exclusive perks throughout the season. This ending is particularly insane because it kind of just implies that this is now just some media franchise that exists in universe without really any consequences or implications. But hey, nobody responsible for this game knows how anything works, so I guess this is where it ends up. Again, in my route, Ava and Harry are dating when they get back home, but he's an awful sex pest, so she dumps him, and apparently Mia and Daan are pretty stoked to host the kidnapping/torture game that they were just subjected to. Wild. Anyways, that was Lust. I promise, I am underselling what a miserable, awkward, painful experience it was to be in the shoes of Harrison as he sexually harasses these women while begging for attention and losing his fucking mind. I know it's not a shocker by now that I hate this game, but I hope you know that the lust route is of a certain level of storytelling that I honestly think maybe video games aren't art. Maybe the whole medium was a mistake. There's a tweet from the Dreamloop CEO complaining about the lack of funding options for game devs in Finland, and I didn't see it until after I finished this route, so my first guttural reaction to it was, there are clearly too many if there was somehow enough money floating around for this fucking thing to get made. However, from here, well, it certainly doesn't get good, but it gets less miserably awful. But not necessarily more interesting either. Part 7. Greed. Again, we're saving trust for last, so the next step was greed. To get this route, you need to just be greedy, talk to Gio and Valerie a lot, and win competitions whenever you can. You also need to play the Wordle every day. No idea why this was really part of it, but it does mean that typing daddy into your phone is potentially necessary to get this route. This route is, unsurprisingly, all about money. Starts out with a trivia competition that's entirely biased in Valerie's favor, focusing on French culture, perfume, all that stuff. But even if you cheat and Google the answers like I did, you're only actually allowed to answer 3 of the 25 questions, so of course Valerie cleans up.
The winner is...
Drumroll.
Charam Valerie!
Merci.
What a surprise.
What's the meaning of your exasperated response? Envy?
Olha, Pita. The questions were kinda too perfect for you. Let's forget about this. It's just a trivia night. I don't care that much.
You're then told that going forward there are going to be more challenges focused on cash prizes that you can sometimes opt out of if you're not interested, but the more you do, the more you'll earn. You're given a new app that shows how much prize money each contestant currently has, as well as an app that enables transfers of cash. Anyways, this route starts out simple enough. The challenges are things like, stay out of your room for a week for 30,000 euros, but you're allowed to stay with other contestants.
Contestants, wanna play a game? Oh, go on now. Contestants, as you may have noticed, a new app automatically downloaded onto your phone. You can now check your balance. You can even check each other's balances! Wink, wink!
Amateur stand-up hour over here.
Shush! As you may have noticed, some contestants were already awarded for past challenges. We thought it might motivate you to participate in future challenges.
What about the enormous prize Val got? How is that fair?
Who told you we would be fair? No, seriously, who told you that? Penteo's like that, ruining our reputation!
Fair enough.
Moving on, the most important part is that I alluded to before, that you can earn more. Deals for money won't cut it. Challenges and competitions are the deal now. Just the good old fun and excitement of playing games with a bunch of strangers on an island. No doom and gloom allowed, or perverted silliness.
What a strange remark.
We ask you to not point that out. It spoils the fun.
Valerie has the most money so far, but Harrison's in a solid second place after the Wordle, plus the box finding challenge, plus some other stuff, I assume at least. Now, I will say, this is the least awful of the 3 routes so far, but while that might sound like a compliment, it really isn't. Suspicion and Lust are both poorly written facsimiles of better visual novels, but Greed is just... kinda nothing? It's really the only way I can describe it. This game is defined by its inane dialogue that means nothing in general, but Greed ramps that shit up to an 11. This art is ultimately the most generic possible take on the reality show format that the game has to offer. Harrison's next challenge is to interfere with Francisca's challenge. She'll make 30,000 euros if she doesn't get visibly angry or swear throughout the day, but that'll be taken out of Harrison's pocket if she succeeds. However, if he can make her angry, she'll fail and he'll get 15,000 euros from the producers. The game allows you to deliberately mix up Spanish and Portuguese to get her angry, which fails, and also to just be extremely misogynistic to her about being a woman mechanic, but that also fails. What eventually worked, for me at least, is that Valerie pops up and is just an insanely obnoxious classist piece of shit for no goddamn reason, and you just have to choose to sit there and let Val do your job for you. Somehow this counts as you succeeding, and also Francisca's mad at you, even though this is entirely Val. This is where it gets really fucking dumb. Harrison thinks to himself, hey, Annika deserves to make some money, and I deserve to make some money off of her. What if I talk to Valerie about setting up a restaurant where Annika's cooking is only available to people who pay for it? Harrison goes to Val, tells her this, and then she says, that's stupid.
Val?
Quoi? Flew.
What?
Quoi?
No matter. I need to talk to you.
What deserves such irrational pestering at such late hours?
A business idea.
Harrison Finn Taylor! Proposing a business on this wretched island. Make it quick.
Well, what about having Annika as a chef? Like, for our own restaurant, and people pay for her food.
Mon cher, care for the proper way of exposing your propositions.
I'm sorry. We could create a restaurant business, a more structured kitchen service, based on Annika's cooking. We could be there to assist her, and, of course, share the profits. Well, most of it for her, of course, but yeah.
Not uncreative, that idea of yours. Nevertheless, you misjudge the potential of our microeconomy. Good one, but I judge it precautious, mon cher.
Oh.
Then, in the most obvious possible twist, she steals the idea and opens Chez Annika.
They told us to wait here.
Missed.
Wait, who said that, Donna?
Val.
Crunchy was smooth as fuck, too.
Val.
Bonjour, bienvenue tout le monde. Welcome to Chez Annika, a new gastronomy experience.
Huh?
Harrison is salty for a day, and then Val hires him as a floor manager, which kinda basically means nothing. Over time, everyone on the island except for Gio will eventually be hired by Val, and she will prove herself to be a truly horrendous boss. Like, she's such a miserable, over-the-top, unrealistic parody of a capitalist that I don't even think it's worth trying to sincerely criticize it. She's written like someone who hates Hassan Piker is trying to parody what they think he thinks a capitalist is. Eventually, the military base. Oh wait, did I mention the military base earlier? Probably not, because it never really ends up mattering much after being found in the first 60 days in the first 2 routes we did.
Woo! Caralho, de me fodam.
Slot machines.
Poker tables!
Blackjack tables.
Ouija boards!
Really?
What?
Not really.
Is this a casino?
It's a casino!
In this route, it's been converted into a casino where you can play slots 10 times a day. And it's not super relevant, but this is one of a million instances of the audio mixing being genuinely atrocious. The sound of winning anything is at least twice as loud as everything else for no good reason. Eventually, at a night in the casino, Francisca and Harrison are playing poker and make a bet. If she loses, she works at the restaurant, and if she wins, Harrison will serve her coffee in Annika's maid outfit. Harrison has a straight flush, but coincidentally, Francisca has a better straight flush, so she wins it all. Val instead steps in and offers a signing bonus if Francisca works for her. They negotiate a bit and eventually settle on 300,000 euros.
Oh, nice.
What?
Oh my. Work it. Sissy that wall.
Boobs do look good on you.
Do you want some sugar with your coffee?
Oh, sure. I would love to have some, miss.
Anyways, soon Valerie annexes the casino into her corporation, leaving Sasha in charge of management, Isak dealing blackjack, and Ava as entertainment. Several characters also have side businesses. Isak reads fortunes and discovers he's in a visual novel that Harrison's the protagonist of and is deeply upset by this. Ava does spa treatments and maybe escorting, stuff like that, and Val takes a cut of it all. You also see another horrendous CG of Isak and Naomi together, confirming that's also happening in this route, and I will spare you the voice acting of this scene because it is easily the worst in the game so far. Harrison tries to steal a page from her book and pay off Gio to get him to work for Valerie, but then he gets furious when Harrison suggests stealing Val's business out from under her, saying that it's about family, loyalty, all that shit. I don't know, man. At this point, everyone except for Gio is Team Val, but pretty quickly it fractures. Somewhere during this period, there's a trivia challenge where team leaders have to divvy up trivia questions based on topics among their teams. At this point, this is, I guess, sort of before a lot of this fallout happens, Val's team is Harrison, Daan, Annika, Ava, Mia, and Isak, while Gio's team is Francisca, Lumi, and Sasha. I think. It's hard to remember because despite taking something like 15 minutes, this doesn't end up mattering really at all. Val's shitty behavior leads Mia to try and unionize with Daan, but they get exposed by Isak. Daan throws Mia under the bus, and Mia quits to become a neutral party. Francisca also leaves and joins up with Gio, who's running the mafia on the island now, I guess, so that's something. Lumi also leaves and joins up with Gio, and before long, Francisca kidnaps Harrison, takes him to the casino, and sits him down with Gio for a negotiation to leave the restaurant as well.
I know you made Frenchie's team. Not her, not Sasha, not anyone else. But you made yourself weak under her. Sure, she hands you a bigger piece of the action, but she has you by the balls, by the dick, by everything. Castrato, ragazzo, castrato. Makes me sad to see you like this. The strength of a man poisoned by a weak little girl. A weak girl that fancies toying around with people, treating them as things. Gio treats his people like people. Respect above all. Loyalty above all. The way of men. Who would want to be under a sadistic little girl like her?
Not like I had a lot of choice. A little girl has a lot of cash after all.
A man always has a choice.
Meaning?
Ah, Katsu, don't let your food get cold.
Huh?
Eat. We'll talk business tomorrow. See, let's continue tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
A few days later, Harrison accepts because Val treats him poorly and, he's just sick of it, I guess. Isak also leaves, but he's an insane person and nobody knows what the fuck he's up to. So, at around the 90-day mark, which, this is a lot of nothing to happen in 30 days, the teams are Val, Ava, Annika, Sasha, and Daan versus Gio, Harrison, Francisca, Isak, and Lumi, with Mia as a neutral party. The contestants are gathered in the cove and faced with two big fuck-off coffin-looking things with holes in the middle, and the producers tell them that the team leaders need to pick someone from each team to put their hand in the box without knowing what'll happen.
Each cabinet possesses a convenient hole to insert a bodily appendage into. An arm! You can say arm! Caray!
No need.
And no, we're not disclosing what happens if you put your arm in there.
Mist, das ist verrückt.
Medo.
Gosh.
Each team leader will have to choose someone to be punished. Goes without saying, Miss Strauss won't be part of this as she's not part of the team. Only one person per team, and both have to be punished at the same time. It's the only way to activate the machines.
Chica, Lumi, Isak. Loyal people who deserve my respect. No betrayals, no failures. As a leader, the decision is easy. Gio's taking the punishment. Gio will put the hand in the hole.
You got massive balls, Chef.
Admirable. Machtaba.
Gott sei Dank.
I'm a big, strong guy. I'll do fine. Can't make my people take the fall. Gio's not afraid of a mysterious hole. Lots of experience putting my hands in dangerous holes. Believe it.
Do tell us more.
Be quiet, imbecile. Don't embolden them.
But, merda, this is...
Don't worry about me. Donna, ragazza. Gio's not scared.
Impressive. Do we have a decision from the leader of Shay Annika?
Si seulement... No.
Bambina?
Quiet! Eva takes the punishment!
What? Bitch! I'm loyal! I'm flawless!
You've been thinking our business! Be glad of your new purpose, to safeguard the other members.
Not fair. No doubt. Sad.
Gio immediately decides he'll do it for his team, and Val panics before forcing Ava to do it. They stick their hands in, and then they get a tattoo of the Inescapable A logo thing. Also, you might have noticed that I haven't really mentioned having any agency in any of these challenges, and that's because you don't. Like with that first challenge where you have to stay out of your room, it's you and Ava who take it up, and then you're forced to play rock, paper, scissors against her to see who actually gets the money. When you play rock, paper, scissors against Ava in the first challenge, you don't get to pick what you play. You don't get to pick rock, paper, or scissors. It's scripted. All you get to pick is whether you try to seriously compete or whether you ask Ava to throw so you can split the money. In the Francisca thing, you try to pick which thing you think will make her the angriest, but it doesn't really seem to do very much. With the trivia boxes, you don't get to pick your topics, and you don't get to actually try to answer the questions. Harrison just fails without your input. At the casino, you don't get to choose whether you'll call, fold, hold, or raise, or by how much you'll raise. In the tattoo challenge, you don't get any say in who's picked, or even really get to express your distaste of Valerie's behavior. It also must needs be remarked that this route takes so fucking long to get to this point. This all happens before day 100, and it takes so long, but nothing fucking happens. Like, by this point in my playthrough of the other routes, I was done lost. I guess Suspicion took a lot longer, but anyways. Also, the restaurant is a stupid concept on its face because it's not a real business if your supplies are paid for by producers and you've effectively employed the entire island, and they're also your only customers. Each route brings new characters to the forefront. For Suspicion, it was Mia, who was your assistant throughout and eventually died, ostensibly tragically at the end. And for Lust, it was Ava, who was your primary love interest and the one most aligned with Harrison's attention-whoring tendencies that eventually dumped him for being a freak. Mia was a weak point of Suspicion, Ava was the only remotely strong point of Lust, and Valerie is easily the weakest part of Greed. Gio is also a more relevant character in this route, but it's primarily Val's story, and she fucking sucks here. Like, oh my god, I truly wish Ava would just kill her again. Anyways, next, you go for a meeting with Gio and reveal Isak's relationship with Naomi, which makes Gio freak out and not only kick Isak out of the Mafia, but also basically demand all of his winnings. Isak seems indifferent to this for some reason, and also doesn't send the money. Shortly after this, Harrison has to join Gio for a quote-unquote meeting with someone in the game room, and Harrison waits outside. Gio emerges covered in blood and carrying someone else's phone, at which point Harry enters and discovers Isak, San's phone, and index finger on the floor.
¿Qué cosa? ¿Soy ghost?
Nothing.
Sí. Niente. It's getting late, don't you think?
Yes, it's late.
I'm going to catch some Z's, like you youngsters say.
Yeah, si Valhalla. I see Val. I can't.
He goes against Gio by trying to help Isak, bringing in Lumi as well, and I guess they must have managed to reattach the finger somehow despite Gio stealing it to keep Isak's phone, since he's shown using all 10 digits in his future appearances in this route. Soon after this, Gio and Harrison have a meeting in the basement of the game room building, I think. Still not really sure what this basement is from, like what building it's part of. It's only ever described as basement on the map. Anyways, not important. Gio and Harrison have this meeting. Gio gets mad at Harry for helping Isak but tells him he'll forgive him, and then Harrison executes his plan to take over the Mafia. Oh, did I not tell you about the plan? It's okay, Harrison didn't tell me either until this point. See, after the attack on Isak, several characters were taken aback at Gio's cruelty, including Francisca. Harrison and her devise a plan to steal the Mafia from under him, with Harrison luring him into a trap, only for Francisca to sneak up behind him and hold a knife to his throat. However, they don't really plan to kill him, so they kind of just, stand there with a knife at his throat and demand all his money, and also for him to hand over the Mafia and then be chill about it. This, unsurprisingly, doesn't work out very well for them.
Feed the puta, get the phone out, unlock it, and wire me the money!
Wire you the money?
This circus has been going on for too long!
No matter to whom. Yes, just send the money. It's high time for that. We're splitting it anyways.
Fuck that!
Huh?
Donna!
No offense, but for the scaralho. I need the money, more than you two know.
Brava, Donna, brava!
Please, Chica, please, don't do this to me. It's enough money for both of us.
Let's get this over with. Gio, por favor.
Ammiro il tuo coraggio, Donna, ma non lo farò.
Não te quero fazer mal, por favor.
Chica!
What, puto, what?
Ah!
Calma!
What the? He's got the knife!
Não, por favor, Gio!
Chica! You killed her!
Donna! Ragazzo! This is how it's done, Codardo! Look what you made me do! Chica's dead! Are you happy? Stupid little boy! Idioti! Looking at the door, destiny, cazzo! Gio seeing you, see! Codardo! Plotting come un ratto! Stabbing Gio in the back!
Gio, please!
Aspetta! Not so fast, bastardo! You really thought you could do this to me and get away with it? You're too green, boyo! Too green!
Gio, I'm...
You weren't ready for this, cazzo! It takes years! You don't know these streets! You know nothing!
Please!
Idioti! Bastardo! It's all your fault. Why, ragazzo? Why?
Gio disarms Chica, steals the knife, and then stabs her with it, killing her apparently nearly instantly. Harrison, panicking, tries to make a break for the door, only to get tackled to the ground by Gio, who strangles him. Thus, the Greed route ends here before day 100 with the murder of Harrison. You do, however, get a brief description of what happened throughout the rest of the season. Everyone else fell in line with the exception of Daan briefly, who seems to have resisted before being either beaten severely or outright murdered. We don't know who all survives to day 180, but Gio and Val are both effectively the winners of the season, with the most money and most control over the island. They're then offered the option to invest in Inescapable's next season, and that's basically where it ends. This is, once again, not the worst route in terms of being the most bad, it's just kind of the most nothing route. It's not uniquely awful compared to the other two routes, but it's also not particularly good outside of Harrison getting murdered. It's just kinda there. It's the most unsatisfying ending, I think, because it's not really Harrison's ending. He's not the protagonist of the greed route, and more importantly, neither Gio nor Val do enough to make you care about either of them finding success. Val has been a miserable brat throughout all of Greed, and Gio's just kind of been chilling and vibing as her only real opposition right up until the end when he goes full mafia and starts cutting off some fingers. However, given that he then immediately proceeds to murder you, there's not really much time to spend with that dynamic on the island either. And it would have been more interesting if he'd killed, let's say, Isak for betraying him, and then you had to live under that environment. But that also would have made the greed route take way too long, so they just killed it, and Harrison, right when it threatened to get interesting. Anyways, we've completed Suspicion, Lust, and Greed with only one route left to go. And dare I say, it's almost a good one? Part 8. Trust. Trust is, and I don't say this lightly, the closest this game comes to genuinely being good. It's clearly meant to be the game's true ending, good ending, whatever you want to call it, but as a consequence, it's also easily the hardest route to achieve without a guide. To get this route, you have to refuse to engage with characters a lot of the time, using minigames to skip interactions with the characters who lead you down the other routes, and responding to certain challenges in ways that don't even seem like options, such as suggesting that nobody killed Annika in the fake murder minigame. Regardless, the premise of this route is that you have refused to play the producer's games. You haven't been suspicious, you haven't been horny, you haven't been greedy, you've just kinda been there. And this makes the De Winters angry. This route begins in earnest with Naomi and Naima announcing that you have all become far too boring, and the show's ratings are suffering as a result, so it's now officially a killing game.
I will return to my original speech from day one. This show's purpose is to show human nature unrestrained by laws and regulations. And our job is to make the show interesting.
I can't blame you for trying, but people don't fall for your tricks.
A toast could be more interesting.
Which leads me to the announcement. The promise of letting you go after 6 months on the island. Consider it now revoked.
Was?
Che cazzo?
No.
You were not there!
Shut up! Hold your fucking horses for 10 seconds and let this finish! Ahem. Yes, the conditions for your release have changed. Instead of being freed on March 11th, you'll be allowed to leave as soon as there's only one of you alive.
No! Helvete!
Mist!
Honey doesn't want to.
But that's...
That's right, folks! Inescapable goes killing game!
They make a reference to how it'd be easier to do with children, another obvious Danganronpa reference, but then explain that their time on the island has been extended indefinitely. Instead of the original 180 days promised, the game would only end once there was only one survivor, whether that takes days, weeks, months, or years. The contestants all band together and refuse to participate in the killing game, and Harrison's next move is to reassure everyone that everything is going to be fine. This route is, in terms of gameplay, kind of the most boring, at least to start. Every other route is fairly linear, but at least with the illusion of choice and involvement. Trust is a straightforward, on-rails narrative. You're just following Harrison for about 5 hours, assuming you're speedrunning shit, as he makes best friends with everyone. Each time you interact with the character, you advance your friendship with them, and this is including the friendships you've built with them prior to the end of the 60 days. Basically, you progress through their friendship paths until you become best friends with them as signified by an achievement. It is possible to fail to get some of these achievements by just failing to talk to everyone enough, which is especially easy for Sasha, more on that later, but in general your only real choices here are the order in which you'll become everyone's besties. Soon, the producers begin implementing motives for the murders, again pulled from Danganronpa. Personal requests were cut off as soon as the killing games began, meaning that individuals couldn't request specific goods, and at this point they also stopped delivering food and water with the promise it'll be returned once someone's killed.
There are cameras everywhere!
Cameras?
Your little support group meeting was great entertainment! That's enough, sister. If this little outburst is over, we have an announcement to make.
Fuck your cameras!
Harry?
Pal? These cameras? Fuck them!
Hey, loser, put that chair down!
Boyle!
What? Am I the only one here who is tired of this shit? There, no more cameras in this restaurant. How do you like that?
That's it. You have gone too far, Taylor. No more food or water.
What?
You will recognize this motive from Chapter 4 of Danganronpa 2, except instead of locking the contestants in the strawberry and grape towers, they're kinda just left to their existing resources. The contestants still have plenty of food and begin rationing it while also hunting for food sources on the island, so the motive isn't all that strong. Harrison gets furious during the phone call with the De Winters, tells the sisters that he refuses to play their game, and smashes all the cameras in the restaurant. This is the start of a boycott, although the purpose of the boycott isn't really made that clear. Harrison says that it's about refusing to give the producers what they want, but for some reason not every character is part of the boycott, even though none of them give them what they want. Namely, a murder. Most contestants who join require a surprising amount of persuasion to do so, but pretty quickly you get a handful of them on board. The day that the cameras were smashed, Sasha notices the producers come back during the night to place new ones, which they then smash themselves. They assign Annika the duty of being their human security camera now. Thanks to her perfect memory, she's able to identify anything different in the restaurant from one day to the next, meaning that she can identify any newly installed cameras that need to be smashed. Around this time, Francisca reveals that her baby has been kidnapped, and not long after, Valerie manages to snap a photo of Naima on the military base carrying the baby around for some reason.
Behold what I have captured with my phone.
The military base?
Yeah, yes, but look closer.
What am I looking at?
You're shitting me.
I don't think that's Annika cleaning the yard.
Wait, what?
Prepare yourselves. Zooming in, you can see.
Naima?
Mere mortals after all. I knew this to be true. Nothing escapes Varizzle's divination.
Totes not true, but like awesome sauce news. If they're here, means we can make them take us home. Yes!
Look in the picture. What is she carrying?
I've been hiding something from you.
Donna.
What you saw in that photo, the bundle in Naima's hands, it's my daughter. It's my Joanna.
Daughter?
Sei una madre.
Huh?
A kid?
Shut up! I can't!
Let her talk.
See, they've been holding her hostage from the very start.
Hostage?
That means you knew what was happening from the very start.
They had her. I couldn't do. I'm so sorry for hiding.
Fucking bastarde! Using a kid as leverage! Ripugnante! Pezzi di merda! Figlie di puttana!
Gio!
No one's mad at you, Chica.
Thus, they've got a new goal: break into the military base and find Joanna. Sasha leads the charge on this, and before long they break through the electrified fence and into the base, although they don't find too much immediately. Sasha does find a computer with a password, and you have to give them a few days to figure out how to crack it. During this time, pairs of contestants are always outside the gates on guard duty to make sure nobody sneaks back in to put up cameras or booby traps to punish them. Eventually, Sasha creates a way to bypass the password by stealing the puzzle minigame from Harrison's original CCAN, and setting it up so that completing the puzzles tricks the computer into thinking the password was input correctly. Thus, you are finally doing more puzzles.
So, that puzzle machine can do what exactly?
Ever heard of eSTEM? It can give inputs to G-Spot.
Give inputs?
Actually, this machine can only send out a Boolean. Pressing enter sends out a piece of data, that being a Boolean. Information about if the passcode was right or not. True or false. Now here comes the kicker. If you solve a puzzle with this machine, it will send out a piece of data too.
A Boolean? More specifically, true?
Yes! We hook this baby up to terminal spot G, and instead of typing a correct passcode...
We solved the puzzle!
And we have snuck into the swingers party.
These aren't difficult puzzles, they're just the same typical connect the pipes hacking minigames you've seen a million times before, but at least there's something. Once completed, a secret passageway is open and they get access to a map of some sort, revealing to Sasha and Harrison that there's tunnels underground. Then, suddenly, a fire alarm goes off. Sasha grabs Harrison and quickly tells him their plan before demanding he run away. He gets to the gates just in time to meet Ava and Daan before the base blows up, presumably killing Sasha.
Blimey! A fire alarm? Now? Come on, Sasha! We need to move!
Harrison, listen carefully. This is gonna be a gamble, but I need you to do the following.
Hi, pal.
Daan! Ava!
WTF is going on?
A fire broke out somewhere.
Where's Sasha?
They're coming soon. Said they have to take care of something first. Ah! Ah!
At least in the eyes of the others. Harrison knows that Sasha set up the explosion to fake their death, and maintains the lie to the others so that Sasha can infiltrate the staff and work to help them from the inside. The fact that this somehow works with nobody questioning how their staff grew by 1 on the same day that a contestant seemingly died without a body ever being recovered is stupid, but whatever. The cast also starts receiving food again because a contestant has died. And the initial implication from the producers is that they were murdered rather than just dying so as to implicate Harrison. However, Harrison basically just says, "Trust me guys, I definitely didn't do it," and everyone believes him, so they move on. Sasha also leaves Harrison with the skeleton key, which he uses with Daan, Annika, Francisca, and Mia to break into the underground tunnels and hunt for Giovanni. Eventually, the producers agree to hand over the baby in exchange for the skeleton key, which the group accepts.
Doesn't it just make your butt clench? So no funny business! I know how to use this, and I am super pissed! I'll have you know this is very poor entertainment.
Joanna, don't worry, Mommy is here.
Oh, it's not her who should worry.
Your cowardly weapons are no match for our bravery.
Give the baby to Francisca.
Well, before that, Contestant Taylor, that device of yours, it is a major inconvenience to us. We demand that in exchange for the baby.
Huh?
But...
No way!
The Tablet of Knowledge is the skeleton key between the worlds. Its value is surely...
Very well. Here.
Gracias. Now to do to this meddlesome device what Daddy does to Mommy!
Miss...
Sis, that was totally uncalled for. And a lie. Father has never hit Mother. Yeah, I just wanted to say something twisted. Thought the laugh wouldn't fit otherwise.
Now you're part of the bargain.
Yes, here.
Joanna.
Lately been much more of chore than I find tolerable.
Think that next time before you take someone's child for this.
Francisca gets Giovanni, they begin fleeing, but then Naomi goes insane and starts trying to kill Harrison with her Uzi. Mia tackles Harrison to the ground, saving him but catching a bullet in the attempt before Naima stops her sister from killing them all.
What a cheeky little boy. Under other circumstances... Merda! Fuck! Fuck! Cut the head off the snake, right? No.
Watch out!
Ouch. Mia!
They rush Mia out, Lumi tends her back to health, and everyone's generally pretty happy. Everyone except for Gio joins up with the boycott at this point. Except, again, not really clear what the boycott actually means beyond what everyone's already doing, but whatever. At this point, Mia and Lumi also begin dating, and Lumi reveals that she's asexual. Soon, however, the next motive is revealed. They're all going to have an awful secret of theirs revealed to the whole world unless somebody dies. Again, you will remember this motive from Trigger Happy Havoc Chapter 2 because this game cannot do a single original thing. However, what happens here is that, after a brief moment of panic, the characters all agree to sit down together and expose their secrets to one another, thus taking away their power. That is, except for Gio, who agrees to listen but not share because it would ruin his family. We're so close to getting to that pin. So, instead, we start with Harrison. His secret is that as a child, he was a math prodigy who got into university early. But then the pressure got to him, he performed poorly on a test, and there was apparently such a scandal that the local papers even wrote about it.
In uni, I failed an important exam. A single whisper was enough to start a rumor. Been called cheat, fake, fraud.
So as a result, he cheated to ensure he did well the next time and got away with it, but the sisters seem to have found out somehow. Lumi believes her family might have committed fraud with their businesses.
Reporting it or being found out could lead to massive fines, or even their deportation as they are not citizens of Finland.
Valerie planted her earrings in a maid's purse to get her fired as a child.
I was a child. There would be no repercussions for my actions by law. But the media, on the other hand...
Isak owes some money to some old friends and has been running away to avoid getting, hurt or killed by them since he can't pay them back.
I trust there will be someone here who may yet help me, for I am certain they will find out.
Mia lost her job for hitting a man with a keyboard after he sexually harassed her.
He was harassing me. Did horrible things, even tried to force himself on me.
Ani witnessed her boss beating his wife and was threatened into keeping it quiet.
Annie was told to lie about it to the police. Annie was told that Annie will not be Annie anymore if Annie tells.
Daan spent most of his childhood very sick and didn't become a cycling prodigy until much later in life than the media believes.
As a kid, I couldn't even walk. I had a surgery that changed my life. There are lots of stories of how I was cycling even as a toddler. I feel bad I didn't say otherwise.
Ava's father divorced her mother to be with her mother's best friend.
I tried so
hard, but like, he didn't care about me either. I'm his daughter.
And Francisca's daughter was conceived during a one-night stand with a man whose name she doesn't even know.
I lie to friends and family and say that our relationship is difficult. They would be so disappointed if they found out.
These secrets, in general, are ones I can understand the characters wanting to hide, but really aren't murder-worthy. As far as killing game motives go, this is honestly pretty weak. Certainly weaker than starvation. However, we haven't gotten to our final one yet. Gio. Actually, you know what? This needs its whole own separate tangent. Part tangent Gio, I guess. I don't know.
I can't share! You don't understand what it would mean for these to be public! I can't risk that they might let my secret loose in the real world! I can't!
Giovanni, wait!
You carajo. That could have gone better.
Is it because Gio doesn't trust us?
I want to talk with him. Alone. I'll be right back.
Throughout the game, Gio has been the poster child for toxic masculinity. He's transphobic towards Sasha, misogynistic towards Francisca, Annika, and Mia, and is generally just a massive raging piece of shit towards anyone who even hints at anything that might threaten his masculinity. In the suspicion route, he's killed for basically just being too Catholic for Isak's taste, and in the greed route, he kills Harry, Francisca, and possibly Daan for getting in the way of his mafia. He is a piece of shit through and through. However, throughout the game, there's also been another thing at play, namely, Gio acting a little bit fruity. He wears tight Speedos, he's constantly trying to get naked with Harry in the sauna to talk about man stuff, and whenever you find him and Daan together, they're making tons of gay innuendo about drilling holes, tossing salad, and everything else, sometimes inviting Harry to join them. It's always kind of presented as this joke that only Harrison really gets. That Gio, despite being a man's man and a traditional Catholic conservative, is randomly accidentally saying some real gay shit. It only ever happens around Daan and Harrison as far as we can tell, and Daan's too stupid to pick up on it, and Harrison's too afraid to say anything to Gio lest he offend his masculinity and get murdered. I think Sasha also notices it sometimes, but never really comments on it beyond making a bit of a joke. Anyways, by the time it came time for Gio's secret, a secret he kept hinting would ruin his family, we didn't really know what to expect, but we did know what the funniest possible outcome would be. As my friend Puppo so eloquently guessed in the chat, it would be that he was gay. However, that would be insane, right? Like, there's no way this game would do that. Let me just play you what happened on stream, because there's no way for me to communicate how fucking funny this was out loud.
My kids. What sort of man am I if I cry?
One that has a soul. Your view of what being a man means is distorted by your upbringing. The world is very different now. These ideas, they're outdated. Trust us or not, just be ready to show your heart when the time comes.
Merda. If Sasha knew, they would understand and know what to say.
Okay. Okay. I didn't think he might actually be.
That kiddo lived in a world I couldn't, with so much
I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. We're screenshotting all of it.
The kiddo was born with balls. But they certainly had some. Big and round and proud.
You're certainly a fan of big round balls, huh? We're just screenshotting this whole one because there's no way I don't end up needing this.
Giovanni.
See.
Giovanni's gay.
The LGBT community is rich in sensibility, has excellent taste, and is full of talented artistic people.
Stupid fucking game. Yes, correct. Giovanni Lombardi is gay, as revealed by a text from Naomi saying, Gio is gay, in all caps, with 3 exclamation points. When I tell you that this moment was maybe the high point of the entire experience of Inescapable No Rules, No Rescue, I cannot overstate it. I was losing my fucking mind. In fact, let me just run you through a couple of the highlights of that experience as shown by my favorite clips from the stream. Here's Gio remembering a fundamental gay experience of his.
So confused by every catcall and every comment the men made to women. Nice tits, they'd yell. Me, I was staring at the men's underwear rack.
Sorry. Here's where Gio has his Derek Barry Stonewall moment.
It was a different time. We didn't have internet. No drag queens to throw bricks.
I need to take a lap. Just, I'm gonna get some water. Take some deep breaths. We didn't have internet, no drag queens to throw. Again, let's just all really quickly do a history lesson here. Nobody died at Stonewall, but Stonewall was in 1969. Hold on, let me just fucking clowns at Dreamloop. Geo is 52. This game takes place in 2017. He was born in 1965. He was in preschool when fucking Stonewall happened. Here's Geo reaffirming that he loves his kids.
But I don't regret my kids. Homo or not, they're the world to me, and I would live this life again just to have them.
I need a drink. Homo or not? What the fuck are you saying? Who wrote this? And here's Harry asking the burning question we were all dying to know the answer to.
Hey, I want to ask, and please don't get upset, but you and Daan?
I can't deal with it. It's the music in the background too. It's just... fucking... It's this heartfelt piano ballad in here. Okay, we're not gonna progress. I'm gonna start a poll or a prediction. Do we think it's a yes or a no? What's wild is that because of how I've written the script for the Inescapable video, this section is last, and that makes me sad because I want to save this reveal for the end of the video because I think it only has payoff if you've at least if you've had to go through the rest of it. But all right. Let's see. What is it, guys? Oh, god damn it.
You're stretching that story too much, kiddo.
I was just curious.
Tragic, he's not fucking Daan. Sad. Now, the reason why this gets a tangent is because 1, it is objectively the funniest, dumbest moment in the entirety of the 50 plus hours I spent playing this game, but also because 2, it really brings us back to something we talked about ages ago with Sasha. Way back in part 3, I said, quote, Sombra's activities are entirely on the same level as the rest of her roster, but the only inescapable contestant even close to being on Sasha's level is Geo, the literal mob boss. In reference to how presenting your only openly queer character as a trans person whose violence and depravity is only ever paralleled by a literal mob boss whose primary character trait is toxic masculinity is actually not great. However, now we know that the only 2 actual killers on the island were both queer, even in the good ending, and the way it's handled with Geo really reinforces some shitty narratives about queer people being dangerous. The most notable of these, and the one I want to hone in on, is that Geo's violence is said to stem from his desire to be a real man, to prove his masculinity through fucking women and brutalizing men. There's something genuinely deeply harmful about the idea that when it comes to homophobes, it's always all just projection. That homophobic and transphobic bigots are just a bunch of closet cases who lash out due to their own insecurity. The reason this is so harmful is that it pins the blame for bigotry on the victims of that bigotry. The idea that the loudest homophobes must secretly be gay themselves, which has been used to make a lot of cishet bigots think they're actually not homophobic or transphobic because they aren't saying it out of some sort of defensiveness. The reality is that, yeah, some homophobic or transphobic politicians, preachers, and other public figures have eventually been exposed for being queer themselves. But overwhelmingly, homophobia and transphobia come from people who are not queer, because fucking duh. It comes from cisgender, heterosexual people who hate queer people for any number of reasons. And this portrayal of Geo does double duty reinforcing harmful narratives by also portraying toxic masculinity as a whole as just the result of closeted men trying to cover for themselves. Geo's toxic masculinity is him trying and failing to be a quote-unquote normal man. And again, this is a narrative that shows up in the world a lot. Whether it's the idea that men buy big trucks or guns or enact violence on other people just to compensate for something or hide something about themselves, it's a shitty narrative that pretends that toxic masculinity is a defensive result of a desire to hide a perceived failure of masculinity, rather than what it actually overwhelmingly is. Cishet men being assholes because the patriarchy enables and encourages it. It's fucking hilarious how Inescapable handles this because of how badly it's written, but it is also important to acknowledge how awful this narrative fundamentally is. How, once again, Dreamloop is ostensibly attempting to tell a progressive, diverse story, but is actually only caricaturizing the marginalized people it purports to represent and is reinforcing harmful narratives about queer people in particular. By the end of the game, 6 characters have been confirmed queer. Sasha, Francisca, Lumi, Mia, Ava, and Geo. Sasha's just being Sasha. Francisca and Ava are friends with benefits in this route, and we'll get there in a sec. Lumi and Mia are dating in this route and have crushes on each other in at least one other route. and Gio is gay. Of these 6, it's important to remember that Mia is the only one in this roster who is not at any point before or during the events of Inescapable in any routes a killer. Sasha and Gio both killed before entering the game, while Ava, Lumi, Francisca, and Sasha were all killers during the Suspicion route, and Gio was a killer in the Greed route. Daan, Isak, and Annika are the only characters implicated in any sort of murders who weren't confirmed to be queer, and even then, all 3 of those characters killed with queer accomplices. It's kind of fucking wild, and once again brings up the question of malice versus incompetence. And to be clear, while I'd still argue that this is the result of incompetence rather than malice, because I don't think they intended to do this, I don't think that excuses how fucking incompetent you have to be to accidentally end up sending these kinds of messages in your story when you're trying to be progressive and representative. You do not get points for trying here. You don't get an A for effort here. This is why representation for the sake of representation isn't enough. Without actually knowing why you're telling a diverse story and accounting for how these characters might behave, you unintentionally tell a harmful story that reinforces negative stereotypes while caricaturizing the people you are ostensibly trying to positively represent.
Hey, what's with the hugging, kiddo?
Maybe one day you'll shake off the toxic masculinity. This is a start.
Okay, enough, merda. I have a reputation.
Anyways, enough of a tangent, let's just get back to part 8, Trust. Actually, not gonna lie, that's basically where this route ends. After Gio reveals his secret to you, you cut ahead to about day 150, I said the correct number earlier, I don't know, I'll get it for the editing, where you're told the sisters have decided to end the game early and send everyone home with their prize money. You go around, chat with everyone, and then get ready to board the ship out. Sasha reveals that they're still alive, you get a CG of everyone on the boat where Ava and Giga's friends with benefit situation is revealed, then you all sail off into the sunset.
Hey.
Huh?
I've got you a present.
Bagel?
Let's call it a good luck charm.
So that's how this whole plan didn't go tits up.
Only a miraculous stone could have pulled it off.
You're just shitting with me, right? You just wanted to have a little pet rock cameo in the end, Harry boy.
Maybe. I didn't want to leave the little rock that could all alone.
Nobody died, everybody's friends, and everybody got their money. Isak, meanwhile, is conspicuously not on the boat. Instead, he stays behind on the island and surprises the sisters with a proposition for a 2nd season.
I applaud your efforts. Truly, the playground of gods in those first months. It was equally amusing to see it fall apart.
You fucking! Sis, let him speak.
Someone is enjoying the show as much as I do. I understand. Who is expecting Prometheus to erupt from a magma of mediocrity? No one was expecting the English to unite an entire continent. And a killing game? How desperate, how pedestrian.
We could have taken better decisions. Sis, the fuck? No escuches este, cabrón! I'm just listening.
Yes. A killing game would have worked with little kids. Who knows? But most importantly, we all learned our lessons here.
Yes, with every ending comes a lesson. Sis, he's making me break the 4th wall! I've told you already, we're not breaking any walls for now.
Good. Because we could all benefit from a 2nd season. And I think it's time to change the Master of Ceremonies.
One that he wants a role in planning. The idea that this show in universe would ever get a sequel is wild, but the idea that this game would ever get a sequel is hilarious to me. But honestly, I hope you do it. I enjoyed getting to flex my hater muscles on this one. Just make sure to advertise it honestly. And if you do, I promise to be the one and only person who actually buys it. However, I'll be honest, this route wasn't terrible, all things considered. In fact, at times, it almost even occasionally approached being good. The characters are all the best versions of themselves, which isn't saying much, but at least it's better than, turning into a blood psychopath like in Suspicion or Greed, nobody having to inform the neighbors when they move into town like with Lust, and just generally everyone working together. I still don't think it is actually good though, it's still hampered by the same poor writing as the rest of the routes in the first 60 days, but the Trust route is the closest we get to a look at what a good version of this game might look like. Now that we've wrapped up this route, we've wrapped up all the stories, so let's get into the final section of this video. Part 9. Final Thoughts. Ultimately, Inescapable No Rules No Rescue is just a bad game. The writing is bad, the characters are bad, the art is generally technically proficient even if half the designs sure took a lot of inspiration from elsewhere, and the premise is bad. When I was doing research for this video, I saw a lot of people defending this game by saying that it isn't really that bad, it's just the $50 price tag that Axis forced onto them that was the problem. To those people, I'd say you need to just quit making excuses for the actions of corporations. The price of the game is a problem, but it isn't the problem. It isn't what makes this game bad. It's like saying that their decision to advertise Inescapable as a Danganronpa-style killing game was the problem with it. It is definitely a problem, but even if it had been advertised honestly and at a fair price, however you define that, it still would have been a bad game for a lot of reasons. It's poorly paced as a consequence of its bad premise. The story should have never been about 6 months, and it never should have taken 60 days for the story to actually start. It also probably never should have had the morning, afternoon, evening cycle, because that just locks into too many events that need to happen to drag out the length. If you're going to do the morning, afternoon, evening cycle, this game needed to be like 1 to 3 months tops. The length is the biggest structural issue with the game, and if you're going to rip off Danganronpa, you might as well rip off their structure too. Just don't assign a time of day to whatever's happening. Either it's time for a scripted event, or it's time for free time. You don't need to do this consistent structure. One thing I'll say in favor of Zero Time Dilemma is that in spite of its many flaws, it was blessedly relatively short at a mere 20 hours from start to finish to get all the routes and all the endings that you needed. Inescapable took more than twice as long to fully finish all 4 routes, and that was speedrunning that shit. Or not literally, whatever. If Zero Time Dilemma had taken that long to complete and had been full of as much filler as Inescapable, it would have managed to be a far worse game than it already is. Another key structural issue here is the routes. This is a terrible way to handle branching narratives. Dreamloop seems to think they've made like the only visual novel to do branching narratives, but that's just not true. They're just the ones who probably did it the worst. Most visual novels with branching narratives do one of two things. They either allow the decisions you make throughout the game to influence the route you end up on, or there are preset divergence points that split the narrative based on a single decision or a limited handful of decisions. Examples of the former would include things like Buried Stars, where the dialogue options you choose influence the route you get without being singularly tied to one decision or another, as well as most romance visual novels where you choose who you romance through collective actions piling up, rather than one single decision or another. However, in both of these instances, it's a lot easier to tell where you're at than in Inescapable. In romance games, you generally know what route you're on based on which character you're spending time with, and in Buried Stars, you get updates whenever your relationships with certain characters or your own mental health improve or deteriorate, so you can at least make some guesses about where you're ending up. Alternatively, you have games like the Zero Escape games where your branching paths are usually the result of the decisions that you make at individual points. You can choose to open door 4 or door 5 in 999, and there's a branching path depending on which one you go down that you can return to at any point to make the other decision. And it's worth remembering that the Zero Escape franchise was published also in North America by Axis Games, just in case anyone's trying to lay all the blame for bad game design on the publisher here. Inescapable is closer to the Buried Stars style, but without having any way of knowing where you're going. As well, while Buried Stars has a similar problem to Inescapable where it can be hard to choose what specific choices lead you down a certain path, or even telling you that a choice is happening to begin with, it benefits from a much tighter narrative. Buried Stars has 6 named characters who are alive at the start of the game in the collapse stage, including the protagonist, and you spend the whole game with most of them. There are only a couple other characters who matter, including the deceased producer and a mysterious ally named Plughole who offers you aid through the game through your phone, or your watch, I guess. But ultimately, the narrative is kept focused on the singular problem. They're trapped under a collapsed stage and are trying to stay alive and sane. The setting is kept equally narrow, limited to only a handful of areas within the collapsed stage, most of which you only explore when the narrative needs you to, and all of which serve a purpose. The characters are bound together by their collective participation in the Buried Stars survival competition show, meaning that a lot of character details are already implicitly established and there's more time to flesh them out in conversation. Buried Stars also takes place over just one night, starting around midnight and ending as the sun comes up. All of this collectively makes Buried Stars work much better, even with some shortcomings. Inescapable, by contrast, does the opposite. Its setting is too broad and unrestrained, its characters have nothing in common, its narrative is too broad to be worth engaging with, and it takes way too long for this format to work. In addition, if you want to get multiple endings, which is presumably the intention of the game, given that multiple endings are usually only something you do if you want people to get all of them, or at least most, you have to restart the game and play it from the start, making it insanely tedious and frustrating. Buried Stars does this too, but you have less distance to go, and you can reset a lot easier. On the writing level, there's really no redeeming this game's writing. Like, scrap it all, start over. See me after class, F. These characters are awful. This premise sucks. The dialogue alternates between inane and incoherent, and the plot as a whole is a never-ending trudge through some of the worst gameplay I have ever experienced. I have truly never disliked a roster of characters as much as I dislike this game's roster, whether that's in terms of how miserable characters like Sasha and Valerie are to be around, the awful implications about characters like Annika, or just the incoherent worldviews of characters like Mia and Daan. The characters are generally drawn in a way that's technically proficient, but their designs range from passable to bafflingly bad, and in CGs, the game's art style really falls apart. The game's premise needed to be scrapped, and that includes its characters. I get get wanting a diverse range of characters, but there's absolutely nothing coherent about this cast that makes it work from a logistical perspective in-universe or a narrative purpose outside the fiction of the game. There is no world in which Valerie, Mia, Sasha, Gio, Francisca, and Harrison are all part of the same story. Just doesn't make any sense. I mentioned it before, but games like this need to be able to justify why these characters were brought together, and the more diverse the cast is, the more work you need to do to get there. Danganronpa does it by only ever using a single class of students from Hope's Peak or the Ultimate Academy for Gifted Individuals, which provides an excuse for why this group of people with extremely diverse skills and personalities are being brought together. In Zero Escape, the characters in the game share connections that they don't necessarily know about at the start and have to figure out as they work through the game's story. However, you don't need people to have a fundamental reason for being included either, necessarily. Your Turn to Die brings together characters that don't share such an obvious connection, but it still works because the people it brings together are generally just normal people. You have students, teachers, police officers, musicians, etc., but nobody who's so far head and shoulders above the rest of the roster that they don't make sense as participants, the way that Gio, Sasha, and Valerie are above the Inescapable cast. The hosts are also awful. You needed to scrap Naomi and Naima because they weigh the game down like nothing else, especially Naomi. Every time she spoke, new viewers on my stream would uniformly react with something along the lines of, Jesus fucking Christ, why does she sound like that? Their dual role as producers and hosts is also stupid because that's not how things work in reality television, at least not in this weirdly distant way. Jeff Probst is on the island with them in Survivor. RuPaul is in the workroom with them on Drag Race. Not every killing game needs a producer to be present in person, but when they're being filmed for a reality competition show like this, they absolutely need more than a Zoom call. Like, it's just bad framing. Delete both characters, write a single good character to host the show, and have them pop up in person while performing to the cameras or something. The approach that this game takes just sucks. Relatedly, the format of the in-universe reality show sucks ass. Having a show where everyone will be given 500,000 euros after 6 months isn't really a competition, and in all routes but suspicion, there's no attempt to implement a real contest at any point. No reality show on Earth would ever start filming with a cast for a 6-month project and then only decide a third of the way through what kind of game they were actually playing. Frankly, it would have made more sense if Inescapable was supposed to be like a slice-of-life reality show about how people cope with this sort of thing. Like some kind of non-competitive Naked and Afraid where the cash prize was just to keep them quiet about what happened. We also really do need to talk about representation, because this game does a sincerely bad job of it. Whether it's queer representation with Gio, Sasha, Ava, Lumi, Mia, and Francisca, or black representation with Lumi, disability representation with Annika, or whatever else they were trying to do here, it fails spectacularly. The voice actors sometimes put on accents that represent where they're from, but just as often you get characters who don't sound even remotely connected to the country they're supposed to be from, and there wasn't nearly enough effort, if any effort at all, put into voice direction. Representation isn't merely saying that someone's from a country or from a certain group of people and then stopping thinking about it there. It's about actually representing human beings and concepts and ideas, and I don't think the writers of Inescapable have ever met another human being in their lives. The Somnium Files doesn't need to tell you it's a diverse representative game. It just has queer characters and even uses them to specifically pull off some fun twists based on your assumptions of heterosexuality. Inescapable feels the need to lean on its diversity because it's the only notable thing about this cast, but it's handled so badly that it actively makes the game worse. The minigames also quickly need to be discussed again because frankly it would be better to have nothing than pretty much any of these. The arcade games are genuinely awful to trudge through. Fishing minigame is a rhythm game with no rhythm, and the trivia games are unwinnable without saves coming while the other characters are useless, and the handful of pipe puzzle hacking minigames are just kinda there. Meanwhile, there's no minigame for things that might have actually needed one. The tug of war event and the boxes game and the greed route easily should have been minigames, and you could have done minigames related to building the spa or playing blackjack or something like that to add a bit of variety. Instead, the game would benefit from scrapping the minigames it has and focusing on just being a visual novel. Like I said in the trust route though, it's possible to see where this game could have found a good version of itself. With better characters, a reduced length, and a focus on telling one good story instead of 4 bad stories, it's possible for this to at least be passable. The trust route legitimately does tell a version of this story that's mostly acceptable, at least in concept. And if this were the only narrative in the game and got enough resources to fully finish it, and if the first 60 days weren't wasted on random bullshit, it'd be a bad game I regretted spending time on, but probably not the worst game I'd ever heard of, and certainly not a game I would have made a 2-hour-long video about or however long this has ended up being. It wouldn't be worth $50, don't get me wrong, but it could be a decent $20 game. However, as it stands, the game is terrible. It's falsely advertised as a Danganronpa style killing game when it only kind of becomes that in one of 4 routes, and even then it does it extremely badly. I mentioned it at the start, again probably nearly 2 hours ago at this point, that a big part of why I'm so mad about this game is that they ripped off my brother, and that still holds true. My brother wanted to buy me a game that he thought I'd like and was tricked by Dreamloop's misleading advertising to drop a lot of money on the game. And he's not alone. Every single person I know who's heard of this game thought it was a Danganronpa style killing game, and most of the reviews mentioned that the game didn't meet expectations because of that. This isn't just bad advertising, to be clear. I'd argue that a game like The Somnium Files was poorly advertised in a way that kind of misrepresented the game, but only in a way that doesn't really get to what makes it good. There's a lot of bad advertising in games, but this isn't just bad. It is intentionally misleading people with the clear goal of tricking them into buying this game based on false premises. That's fraud. However, even if it was accurately advertised, it would still be poorly written, offensively bad at representing an ostensibly diverse cast, and based on a bad premise. There is a part of me that feels bad going this hard against a small studio, but a bigger part of me thinks that you don't get to scam people and then hide behind that "I'm just a whittle guy" excuse. Like, okay, fine, you're just a whittle guy. I'll bounce your whittle head off the front bumper of my fucking car if you defraud my family, especially when they're trying to do something nice for me based on your fraud. I don't expect magic, and I've played plenty of scuffed visual novels at this point that I've still taken joy in, but this isn't just scuffed. It is bad, it is honestly harmful towards the people it pretends to represent, it is fraudulent, and it deserves exactly what it's gotten from me. If you're a part of Dreamloop and you made it this far, congratulations. Your tenacity in the face of all these brutal insults is maybe the only thing I admire about you guys. If you're expecting an apology now or ever for how I've spoken about you, your company, and your game, I hope you brought a comfy chair to wait in. Or I hope you brought 50 USD for me to give back to my brother to repay him for ever getting scammed by you. Also, whoever wrote and recorded Sasha's dialogue, begging you to actually watch a Drag Race season so you can understand the references you were making.
Queen, what? Chance of a lifetime. What do you got cast in the next drag season?
For everyone else, thank you for watching. I know your time is valuable and I've taken up way too much of it with this one. If you'd like to watch more long-ass videos where I rant about visual novels, you should check out this video from last year where I talked about unhinged storytelling and Spike Chunsoft games, both what works and what doesn't. Otherwise, you should check out the video I put out recently about the study I conducted where I gaslit, gatekept, and girlbossed my audience for science. Both videos will show up on screen shortly, or you can click the cards that just popped up. This month, my channel members picked how video games distort people's perceptions of real-world resources in the Members' Choice poll, so that video will be coming out soon. If you'd like to vote in future polls, you can become a member for $5 a month by clicking the join button below. Thank you to all of my channel members: Mini Q, Olesp, Cage the Orc, Fish Toast, Alex Stone, Nemo the Survivor, Dextiny, Yoshi of the Wire, CatLover192, Sourdough, It's Peggy BTW, Aluma Riley, Venus, Cadence, Windex the Great, V, Deleathers, Gavost, Marsh Alice, Crimson Cyclo, and Good Guy Luis. Special thanks to MiniQ, who is now officially the first person to reach 12 months as a channel member. That's insane. Whether you're a member, a subscriber, or you just clicked on this video out of curiosity, thank you very much for watching, and I hope I'll see you around again soon.